Board of Selectmen meeting. I welcome everyone out in the public and everyone who is attending in the room as well. Before we get started, if we could all rise for our invocation and pledge allegiance.
Lord God, we come before you with grateful hearts. We ask that during this meeting that you would bestow upon each of us wisdom and discernment in working in government and making decisions on behalf of our town. We thank you for the many blessings, Lord, and as always, we pray to you in the manner that we were each taught. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so we have a pretty robust agenda tonight. We're going to get started, and I will certainly address everybody in the room first. You don't have to wait around longer than you really have to. The board can talk on some items that you guys don't have to be here for. So actually, if I could, I know we have more people in the audience than we usually do. You guys in the back, welcome. What are you guys here for tonight? I just want to make sure. I just want to make sure there's not something specific that.
My name is Dr. Donna Ricci. I am the owner of Archer's Artemis and at 16 Carlton Drive, Unit C. So we are the business that's directly above where the marijuana growing facility.
All right. So that's what. All right. So we'll have a conversation. So we're not supposed to. We were going to skip over that, but we can certainly have a conversation about that. Okay, that gives me some insight into everything else. All right. So first and foremost, I'm going to start with correspondence section. We have notices of resignation from three different people. Janice Downey is an alternate member of the Council on Aging. Janice, thank you very much for your time and efforts to the town. Notice of resignation of Kenneth Woodbury as a school crossing officer. Ken, thank you so much for your time and efforts as well. And lastly, a notice of resignation of Justin R. Perry as a reserve police officer. Justin, thank you so much. We wish you the best moving forward. Okay? Okay? All right.
I'd like to say thank you to each of you for your service to the community.
Yes. Excellent. Okay. So I am going to start with kind of the old business, since we do have some folks in here. Mike, is it okay if, even though we're not going to discuss Greenbridge, the host agreement, that we can bring this up? As we do have, folks.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's on the
Okay.
agenda.
So, so just so everyone knows, we will not be voting on any host agreement this evening, as we are not ready to vote as a board. We also will not be voting on any letter of non-opposition, as we are also not ready to take that vote either. But certainly, we welcome any open discussion regarding Greenbridge and the growing facility that is proposed and that we are currently in discussion on. Okay, so the board is here to answer any questions. We did have conversations last week, with Greenbridge, and we are still in discussions with them. Okay, but nothing really, has happened since then. There's some documents that we are kind of going back and forth in negotiation with. Okay, so
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
before you address the crowd's, people in the room's concerns, I just want to make it as well known that our responsibility as a Board of Selectmen is to take a look at a host agreement and also issue, whether we're a letter of non-opposition. We, just make this clear, we do not issue the permit for this facility. That rests with the planning board. All we are doing is saying, look, if the planning board accepts this, and they'll have public hearings, and there'll be people, I'm sure townspeople coming in to say whether they want it or not. Our response, everything that we agree upon, if we agree upon a host agreement, is all contingent upon the planning board allowing this to happen in the first place. So I just want to get that out there, that any misnomer of we're issuing a permit and we're allowing this to happen. What we're doing is, a business has come to us, they've asked us to, establish this business, and part of the protocol to do that is to develop a host agreement and issue a letter of non-opposition. Doesn't mean we have to, but that doesn't mean that immediately they're gonna, put up a sign and, throw tenants out and do whatever they're gonna do. So I just wanna make that's our responsibility, at this point. So, again, they just can't set up shop. There's multiple processes to go through. We're just the beginning. And the reason for this is the last time we did this with Healthy Farms, we didn't have a host agreement in place. We were lucky to get it after the fact. So we didn't want to, personally, I'll speak for myself, I didn't want to see that mistake be done again. So if we're going to consider this business, this manufacturing business, and they happen to be a business that allows a host agreement, I think it's only gambling and marijuana facilities are the only two in the city, in the state, that allow this type of thing. I could be wrong, but that's my understanding. So I just want to make that perfectly clear, that we're just negotiating contingent upon them, A, state approval, and B, the planning board even allowing it in the first place. So, again, I just wanted to make sure that everybody knows
Thank
that.
you. I think that was an important step.
Yep.
So does anybody have any discussion, question? Yes.
So I'm not, thank you for that. That was a wonderful clarification. I'm not sure the degree to which the board and the town is fully aware of the archery studio that does exist here. We're 4,000 square feet. We opened 2 years and 3 months ago. We have grown pretty rapidly. We service many youth and adults in the greater Georgetown community, and actually all the way up and down the East Coast. Because of the nature of our facility, we're somewhat unique. Our mission statement is enriching mind, body, and spirit through the art of archery. We are training and teaching and events for people related to all archery. It is most of the people come to me typically through parents who want their kids to have a unique experience. Archery is something different, and we're not a hunting facility. We're really about more of the personal development, much like a martial arts kind of thing. So I also contract with Newburyport Youth Services. We've done summer camps, we've done winter camps. We have ongoing classes with them. I mentioned that I'm a clinical psychologist because people come to my facility from places like, every once in a while I'll get a call from some kind of residential program or something where there's people with some disabilities, and they want their participants there to be able to do something in a safe environment where they'll know somebody really gets what's going on. So I try as often as I can to do a low cost or a no cost event for people with disabilities. So every time somebody shoots at Archer's Artemis, they sign in. As of yesterday, we had 6,478 sign-ins. So we are growing at a very rapid rate. My youngest student is age 4, my oldest is age 80, and again, we have a mix anywhere in that range. We are also a junior Olympic archery development program through USA Archery and the Olympic team. So I have been told by the director of training of all of the National of USA Archery that we are actually one of the largest programs that they have now. In fact, he is coming out in a couple of weeks to talk with many of my students about the process to get to the Olympics, the process that he took to get to the point of trying out for the Olympics, and he's going to be doing some private lessons with my students as well. He has also, I'm a USA Archery Level 4 coach. There are only 5 levels, and there are only 5 of us in Massachusetts. So what that does is that draws to our facility and our community people from, I train levels 1 and 2. People come from up and down the East Coast to come and train with me. I actually have been fortunate enough that I'm now going to the next level of training, and soon I'll be one of 50 people in the country that's going to be able to train a level 3 coach. So so we have a lot of people coming through. Not only do we have these 6,478 people who are shooting, but invariably a parent is bringing them. They'll bring their siblings. So it's not uncommon for me to have infants and toddlers in the facility while they're watching their siblings shoot. We do tournaments every 6 weeks. So we're quite a robust program. And so I certainly was aware, I started this business at an older age and people thought I was absolutely insane. And I took every dime I had and quite a few I didn't have and said, and we're gonna make this work. And it has been hugely successful. When Barry Enos and I were doing the developing of this facility, we went top of the line. We got the highest level fire resistant material. I have a 70-foot long observation area. So when I have tournaments or when parents just want to watch their kids shoot, there's a whole long area where they can watch this. So he and I said that we're building something that's going to be here long after he and I are both gone. And I'm pretty clear about this. I would not have invested this amount of time and money if I thought this was going to be short term. So we are here to stay. And we are growing, and there's a very good likelihood that the nation's eyes are going to be upon us. So I understand the security is excellent. You've got redundancy systems, you've got, all kinds of regulations, probably one of the safer places. I do also understand that when it comes to the circulation system, it's probably pretty sophisticated as well. They've got to deal with cross-pollination. There's all kinds of issues there. However, I have been told, and this may not be correct, that there's no guarantee that there will be no smell of marijuana coming through the into my facility. And having been there for the last 2.5 years and having smelled all kinds of things coming out of that business that was there before and heard all kinds of noise, I certainly would want to know, first of all, is it even allowed for all of these kids to be there when you have this underneath them? But also the smelling of marijuana. With the smelling of marijuana comes the invariably a joke about being high. Being high and weapons, not a good combination, and I have worked too hard to create a family-based image. We don't even shoot at images of sentient beings. We are not hunting-based, and so we have created a really wholesome family environment. Again, having said that, I have a complete respect for the community and its need to be able to move forward economically. So I just wanted you to be aware, obviously my #1 priority is my students. My second priority would have to be my business, and then I leave the community issues to the board. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate the insight. Anybody else?
I have a quick question, follow-up.
Absolutely.
So are you do you have a lease, or are you at will?
Yes, I have a lease.
Do you know when it expires?
We did it's a 3-year lease, but it is
Renewable?
with the agreement that we would continue. Yeah, there's no way we were going to invest that kind of money without that agreement.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question too. Are you totally inside facility, or do you do some stuff outside there?
I have
also?
yet to do anything outside. We
Okay,
have,
thank you.
at this point, this is where we are.
And the camps that you mentioned, do you
All
go?
indoors.
Were they at your facility?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Mhm.
Have you had any communication with the landlord about this issue?
Other than, I've been at the Olympic Training Center several times in the last several months, and I was out of the country, so I wasn't here last week. I haven't had my pulse on this at all. He has not said much to me. He did mention that there was a possibility that this was happening. Again, I said, I'm open to unique businesses. I get that. But then obviously there's the concern about guidelines around, in particular, children being around this.
Thank you.
Very good.
I don't have any.
I'd be interested in that conversation, with your landlord. Again, we're not in a position, to tell, the landlord how to, really utilize his building. I mean, in his leases, right? And in terms of children, in that facility, with a potential business like this, again, this board's looking at a hosting agreement, okay, and we're looking at a letter of non-opposition. If I'm not mistaken, that would be a planning board, issue.
Mm-hmm.
That's
State issue too,
in the
right?
state issue, right? So again, you have to remember, this is not a board that is going to, look at that as much as, say, the planning board, okay, or the state.
May I ask, would that be something that I would be notified as someone in that building? Is that, I don't know enough how that works. we've been notified that that meeting would be happening?
Oh, yeah, the meeting would be a public, those are all public meetings, and I'm sure they'd be having a public hearing for
Okay,
people
great.
to testify.
Owners get notified, not the renters.
Okay,
Ah.
but wouldn't it be on it's a published agenda, right?
Yeah.
So it's on the internet, it's on our website.
Well, that, and you could ask the landlord to let you know.
Oh, I can certainly follow up, I'm not concerned about that, but thank you, appreciate it.
Steve?
Yeah, I appreciate you coming out tonight, and I just wanted to clarify a couple things in regards to what our responsibility is, and Dave was absolutely right. You know, we're talking about a host agreement, whether we are in agreement with this company, and you know, we have the a contract in place, and then the next step would be the letter of non-opposition. But I want everyone to understand that if we don't provide a letter of support or a letter of opposition, the project stops. There is no planning board. So even though the planning board decides whether there's gonna be business and they go through all the bylaws, it actually starts here. So it does start with the selectmen, and if we decide to give a letter of non-opposition or a letter of support, they can continue on with the next step with the state. If we don't, it stops there, and then the planning board's not being involved. I just wanted to make sure everyone understood how the process works.
Again, to clarify, I was worried that people were thinking, if we vote this in, they can start opening up shop.
Sure, no,
That was
no,
my
absolutely,
point.
yep.
That's not the case.
Absolutely.
And you are fully aware this is more of a growing facility. They're not.
Oh, absolutely.
That's a special.
Absolutely, yes, that's, yeah. Again, the main issue with that would be the image that gets out there and how it's perceived by my family-run business. And again, I can even work with that, but if there's no guarantee of no smell whatsoever, then I would be concerned about what impact that would have. We've got infants, we've got toddlers, we've got youth, we've got smelling of marijuana, and I do understand it can get quite strong.
Okay, once again, have you had a conversation with your landlord about that?
No, it did not.
Well, I'm gonna highly and strongly suggest you do
I
that.
will,
All right,
no
because
question, it will
that's-
happen.
Okay. Yes, Gary.
Just another suggestion.
Sure.
We have another facility in town, you might reach out to Healthy Farms and see if they'll allow you to come in as a visitor. I've been in their facility, in the front part of the facility, and I do not remember any odor or anything. So they may welcome you as a visitor, I don't know their policy, but.
Okay. Yeah. Any other comments or questions in the public? No? Okay. Thank you so much for your comments. We
Thank you
appreciate
very
it.
much.
All right.
Thank you for coming.
Okay, so next on, and again, we will be, for the board, we're gonna be skipping over any vote, on any host agreement or letter of non-opposition tonight, as we are not ready, to do so.
Mr. Chairman, on that though, we did get an email today from Jonathan that was kind of questioning, there was some questions there.
Yes.
Are we gonna answer those, or is that
Yeah.
gonna be, the
We
committee's
just got,
gonna do
we
that?
just
Well-
got, yeah, well, we just got it today.
Yeah.
And Jonathan's email to me before I went on vacation was that he intended to send it to me, to us,
Yeah.
to me, and then we would go over the
Okay,
language.
so that's gonna rest with Doug.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and, we might bring up those changes later on in the meeting. Okay?
Yeah, all right.
Well, me and
Yeah.
Mike, you know.
Okay.
Alright.
All right, next, do we have anybody from High Five? How are you?
Good, and you?
Good. If you could, identify yourself.
Sure, Ashley Steves, 147 Sylvan Street, Danvers, Mass.
All right, great. Then welcome to our meeting. Why don't you tell us a little bit about, your program?
Sure, so we're partnering with the Erie Fire Association and their pancake breakfast happening on October 14th at the Pembroke School. We are doing a 4-mile road race from the school in hopes that the race will bring a bunch more people to their breakfast, that necessarily maybe not residing in Georgetown, but from other communities that are wishing to participate in the race, and therefore having a much more successful breakfast for them. I have Donna, one of the vice presidents from Erie 4, with us tonight, and another member here from the Erie 4, just in support of the race. I have discussed the route with Lieutenant Hatch from the Georgetown Police Department. It's a 2-mile out and back course from the back of the Pembroke School. So we do have his approval in moving forward to making it your kind of decision, obviously, that morning. We plan to do an early start, obviously it being a breakfast, a 7 a.m. start, 4 miles. I mean, people will be out there pretty much anywhere between 30 minutes and hour and 15 minutes max. We'll have plenty of volunteers, obviously with the help of the Georgetown Police Department, pretty straightforward. And just hope for a really successful fundraiser for the Erie 4 Association.
Okay. Actually, if I may, I'm going to read just where this is going.
Sure.
to.
Yeah.
In the letter, it says we will be utilizing the access road from the school out to Elm Street, run a few hundred yards against traffic, turning on to East Street, and head down Pingwee Farm Road to turn around and follow the same route back. All right, so it doesn't seem like a lot of utilization of different roads. And again, Lieutenant Hatch has reviewed this and has approved it. Okay, and it looks like there's about 150 to 200.
Yeah, that's our hope, for sure.
Okay, all right, Steve.
Did you mention Elm Street? Was that part of the route?
Or you, it is.
Yeah, coming out to Elm Street and running a few hundred yards against traffic so we can turn on to East Street.
The date is October 14th. So Saturday, October 14th.
Yeah, I was going to say, in terms of construction, there's a lot of...
Yeah, so Lieutenant Hatch brought that up, and he had said that he had talked to the lead construction worker and said that he was certain it would be done. We also know from a person that is also on that construction that if there is a possibility that we would know well enough in advance to alternate the course or reroute around the school. And the school is pretty big enough that I think we can work out moving a start or moving the finish to where we can make up some mileage if necessary.
Okay.
Or shorten it if necessary.
Sure, okay.
But yeah, we are very well aware of that.
Mr. Chairman, good question.
Sure.
So who are we issuing permission to? Is it High Five 'em or is it Erie 4?
I think it would be our company, my company, High Five. Just because I think that the Erie 4, they're basically doing the pancake breakfast and have, I believe, the permission from the schools.
So we're going to need an insurance certificate, right?
Yes.
Do we have that yet? No? No? Okay. So we would need that.
Yep.
Right.
Sure thing.
So with any motion, we would have to put that in,
yeah.
contingent upon that.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve a road race on Saturday, October 14th at the Pembroke School, starting at 7 a.m. in conjunction with the Pancake Breakfast fundraiser at Erie 4, to High Five 'em, contingent upon filing with the Selectmen's office proper paperwork and insurance guarantees for the event.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion from the board? Yes, Gary.
Were you here last year?
It was.
You were the group that did the one out of the
Flatbread?
country club?
Yes.
Flatbread, yes, okay. And how did that go? I guess
It was
must
great.
have- So you're back here.
I'm back. Yeah, it was wonderful, actually. Thank you for asking.
On Pingwee Farm Road, are you staying on the tar part there, or are you going out into the?
Staying on the tar, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, what we normally do with some of the road races is, I'm sure she can attest to, the lieutenant actually goes out, we ride the track. He's a runner and a biker and understands obviously the traffic flow. So I think you took a nice little field trip with the lieutenant on the first run and then on the second one. And that size race and that distance is really not a big concern for us with regard to traffic or any impediments. When you have something like the size of the Dunhill race or something, that's a big race. So I think we're in good shape with it.
Okay. If I may add, how long, Janet, do you need that insurance binder or certificate?
Send it
before you-
right over.
Yeah, just, well, a couple weeks before the event.
All right,
just-
by a couple of weeks, okay?
Sure.
All right. So we have a motion in a second. Any further discussion? Okay, if not, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's have a great event.
Thank you so much.
Mike, are you gonna run that race?
Hopefully I'll finish it too.
We can just go through the crowd. So, what are you here for?
Just here to watch the meeting and
Oh,
I think
sure.
that discussion Mike wants to have in the meeting.
Okay, and gentlemen?
Just observing.
Okay, awesome. All right, so then we're gonna go to letter from the planning board on the temporary moratorium. Okay. All right. Mike, do you want me to just read this thing? Or is that where we're at? I mean,
Or-
this is an open discussion on this thing?
Well, the board needs to respond to the planning board. See if they want to move forward to bring this warrant article to the special town meeting.
Okay.
They've put together the language, and their next step would be to conduct a public hearing prior to posting it on the town meeting warrant. You would still decide what goes on the warrant.
Okay.
When does it open? When does the warrant open?
Probably
We've set the date, haven't we?
the first or second week
October.
September.
September. So that's,
We have not set a date yet.
Okay.
I think September 11th, we set our next meeting, that would,
September 11th we do.
Probably
Yeah.
that would be the time.
So, Mr. Chairman, I can chime in on this a little bit, because it was,
Yes,
I
sir.
kind of led the discussion on this when I was in your position as chair. I think this is only prudent that we do this until the state can figure out and give us the actual rules on, what we're supposed to be doing. And it seems to me the state's actually moving pretty quickly on this, quicker than I thought they would. In some respects, on the overall issue of marijuana, the recreational piece of it. So, this was written by legal counsel, right, Mike? The moratorium, the warrant article?
Well, they started with a legal counsel template.
Okay. So it hasn't been reviewed by them?
That I'm not sure of.
So I would fully support going back to the planning board and letting them know that we certainly want to pursue this and we would be willing to consider putting it on the warrant in September. So, I think that probably should come from you, with our support too.
If I may also.
Yes, Gary.
Well, Mike I had something printed, you guys probably got an email today from KP Law, and it really doesn't look, some of it looks like definitions, but I don't really see any to see if the town will vote or anything of that section like we may have, I don't know. So I don't think it's really written like it quite needs to be at this point. But I certainly am in favor of moving ahead.
But that's what I said, I think that
Yeah.
legal counsel should obviously, like all warrant articles, they review it to make sure it's right.
Yep. Steve or Doug, any comments, questions?
Yeah, did they include an end date on this?
Yeah, June.
June of 2018?
Yep, because it's supposed to be July 1 is when the state.
I think there was language in here on the.
Yeah, I think the state, I know the state recommended to not go beyond December of 2018.
I think that's what it was, December
I'm
2018.
just wondering
So
if
we're
we
June.
should,
No, we should go to.
yeah, I'm wondering if we should go to December.
But with these new laws, this new law, the acts of 2017 with regards to cannabis. It says here that the last date on the update from KP, that the CCC, meaning the Cannabis Control Commission, may begin issuing licenses, prioritizing applications under statutory criteria, June 1st of 18.
They still need to go through our zoning bylaw.
We already have a bylaw.
For
No,
recreational
no.
medical.
Well, I don't have a copy of that bylaw in front of me, so.
I think we have a bylaw that establishes a zone,
It's known.
but not any type
Not
of rules and definitions of what is allowed and what can't be allowed, until we find
I
out from
think
the
we
state. Do we?
Yeah, I think it was when we approved an overlay district
Yeah.
as a town.
Yep.
And then there was a bylaw written that was also approved at town meeting, I believe, if I remember right.
Yeah, but that's about RMDs, it's not about recreational
Right.
use.
Everything's classified in RMD right
Right.
now.
Well,
I
it's
agree about
They're
that.
very
medical
ambiguous.
marijuana. It's
They-
medical marijuana, the actual bylaw, but we can verify that.
Okay. So as a whole, this board, sounds like we are in support, of this letter, so that I can get back to the planning board.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we authorize the chairman to respond to the planning board's letter
Thank
in support of a temporary moratorium bylaw to be placed on the warrant, or for consideration on the warrant for this upcoming town meeting in September.
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Will we be able, it's on the topic, but not on this particular one. So, would you wanna wait till after the vote, or bring it up now?
Why don't we wait till after the vote, if it doesn't pertain specific to this? Any other further discussion? No?
No, I'm not in favor of it.
Okay, so, motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I-
Passed.
Uh,
Okay.
Like my discussion now?
Yeah, why don't we do that? Yeah, go ahead.
It was to basically do with, I think we also going forward may wanna think about, I don't know if this is the proper way to do it, but to also think about a possible sales tax. Yeah, but I think the town has to adopt that, just like we did adopt the, food excise, food tax.
Yeah,
So I think we wanna pursue that also if we're doing one.
Yeah.
I don't know, we may be able to wait on that until the spring, but I think we need to start pursuing that avenue.
So when we say sales tax, is the state already doing it?
I think the town is allowed to.
The
town is allowed to. Okay.
Add 3% to it.
Oh, is that?
And if we are at some point doing something with one of our facility in town, we probably want that in place before we move forward with that.
Is that 3% of sales tax?
Yes.
Yeah.
What? Oh, I thought it was, that was part of the,
Host agreements and sales tax and,
okay.
Well, okay, may I read this on the KP law? The act increases the amount of local tax that municipalities may impose on the sale or transfer of marijuana or marijuana products by a marijuana retailer operating within the city or town to 3% of the total sales price, an increase from 2%. If a municipality wishes to adopt the local sales tax, it must accept general law, chapter 64N, section 3, by a vote of its town meeting, town council, or the approval of a city council and mayor. If a municipality has already accepted section 3, a new vote of the legislative body will be required in order to increase a sales tax rate between 2 and 3%. The local tax does not apply to sales of marijuana or marijuana product between marijuana establishments. And then it goes into what the state charges for their take. So I don't know that, I guess we haven't approved the sales tax.
Vote if I heard you correctly.
Yeah. Well,
Jonathan,
town council, all depends.
he brought that up when we talked about it, and to Gary's point, when should we do it? And, would it hurt to do it while we're having a moratorium, or do it afterwards? And he really couldn't answer that question. I remember Gary specifically talking about it.
Just imposing the moratorium, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Absolutely.
That doesn't mean that we don't stop working, I don't
Right,
think, on
no, I
how
agree.
many licenses we'd like to see in that. I mean, the moratorium, it just will establish that nobody can come in and open up. That gives the planning board the time to do all the stuff that they talked about, the hearings and that. We could still continue to have the discussion on what we want to allow for recreational licenses and that type of thing. So,
No, I agree with you. I'm on your side on the sales tax issue. Just a matter of procedural, when we do it. Maybe we should just ask legal counsel again, Gary. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, the sales tax is a local option tax, just like the meals tax is. It follows the same exact procedure, and it has to be approved at a town meeting. So, I
and it would
think
go in the general fund, right?
it certainly would.
That's all right.
You know how long it took me to get that sales tax vote even on the warrant?
Well,
You guys are ready to do the marijuana like that? It's not even a challenge anymore.
So we have to figure out when to.
It's not gonna cost me anything.
well,
I mean, we're not even.
adopting a moratorium against marijuana and then voting at the same meeting
Well, that's-
to tax it sends a different.
I don't think it's
message.
against. I think
I don't
just
think
hold
so.
off until we know what the rules are.
Well,
I'm-
but yeah, it preventing it for a temporary amount of time.
So when the day comes, we'll be prepared.
Yeah, at the Springtown meeting, I would. 'Cause they're not going to issue licenses until.
Yeah,
June
I
1st.
agree, it may not need to be this one, I did say it may be well to hold off till the Springtown meeting. But, yeah.
Yeah, we don't. And we really don't even have anything of a.
And we may,
An application for.
well, we may need that time, that might be a great goal, the Springtown meeting, to figure out what we wanna do for licenses, the sales tax. I mean, at least that way, we're setting ourselves a goal, a date of what to work for. So if we're okay with establishing this Springtown meeting for that stuff, I think that's great.
Okay. Steve.
Yes, so correct me if I'm wrong, Doug, but do we have the option, I know the new laws right now, if the town voted in favor of legalizing marijuana in the state, if they voted in favor of it, I should back up, if they voted against it, then a town isn't required to have any of those facilities. If the town voted in favor of it, the Board of Selectmen have have two options. They have one, which is 20% of the liquor stores, liquor licenses in town, or the number of RMD facilities that already exist in town. It could be limited to that. But do we as a board get to vote in terms of whether we want them at all? Even if the town voted yes? I think it has to go to a town vote too. Yeah.
When I first read House 3818, it certainly sounded like if the towns or municipality had voted yes on question 4, that the Board of Selectmen or the governing body would have some type of authority, but the local, somehow that's changed, I think.
Okay.
Because with this update, it said, if a municipality voted in favor of question 4, then 2 votes must be taken before an ordinance or bylaw can be effective. It must be approved by the voters by ballot at an annual or special election, and the ordinance or bylaw must be approved by the local legislative body. So there's two. There's us and then there's
So
the
it almost sounds like we should be thinking about that before the sales tax, any type of tax.
There's a lot of stuff that we need to do with regard to the whole.
Yeah, I just mean the
concept.
process, so
Yeah.
if we go in that order,
Right.
if we put it to a vote and the vote doesn't pass, then there's no sense in us talking about it.
Well, I think that we have time, because the moratorium has passed this board, all right?
Sure.
So I think that we have time from now until spring, I guess, that we can talk about these issues and be prepared, and not just at, an hour before the town meeting, go out and say, oh, what are we gonna do here? We should
No,
talk
I
about
agree.
all these things.
Yeah, I just wanna make sure that that was the purpose of my statement, was
Yeah.
just to make sure everyone, understands that there are other steps that we need to take
Right.
while this
Oh,
moratorium
no, absolutely.
is in
If I
place.
could
yeah.
add to the conversation a little bit, Mr. Chair.
Last point,
Okay.
Gary, and then we're gonna move
Well,
on.
if, just above what Doug read, it said the procedure for adopting a bylaw or ordinance to prohibit or limit the number of licenses. And then it refers, and we may be doing at least the limit part, maybe both. But I think one of the important things to take note of is even above that, is how many licenses, I don't think we really have that answer, are we allowed? It may just be the one license by the language above that, I'm not sure. So I think we also need answers on that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right,
If I just might, if you guys read the KP Law update that they sent today, Mike sent out, then you'll get most of the answers to it. I mean, there's some ambiguity in it, and there needs to be clarification on language and what it actually means. But most of that stuff that we've been asking here is contained in this.
Mike, if you could just, get their opinion, on that, all right, and we'll
I'll
circle
talk
back.
to John, yeah.
Okay, next on the agenda, we're gonna go to the minutes, just to make sure we can go through, hopefully everyone has taken a look. Let's start with the July 10th, minutes. Looking through them, does anybody have any issues, comments?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
On the third page of those minutes, under new business, at the end of that paragraph, it's, perhaps you can help me here. It says, Mr. Bonavita stated that this will only be for medical marijuana. And then Janet has it noted as Mr. McDonald stated, medical purposes for now. Do you remember it that way? Because I'm not, I asked a question.
Do I remember it that way? I can't say I remember it that way. What I can tell you, Gary, is in that my understanding from him is that this was for medicinal purpose only, and that they had no plans for recreational use.
Yeah, so could we just double check perhaps on the tapes or something whether that notation is correct? I guess I would like to do that rather than approve these minutes.
Okay.
There's no tape.
No, this was when they were in front of us up here at this one.
Oh, on the 10th. Oh.
Yes,
Yes.
I
that's the
didn't have
10th.
those.
Yep. Yeah, there should be tapes on that.
So,
Okay, were there any other
I
questions on this
I didn't.
date's minutes? Okay, so before we approve that, we're gonna have to check the tape, so we're gonna pass over that one. Okay.
Yeah, I did do that.
All right, so we'll go to the July 24th minutes. Any questions, comments about that?
motion to approve as written, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Okay. Motion is second, any further conversation? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. So if you can check on the 10th for us, Shannon, on that, and then we'll have to circle back at our next meeting. Okay. I know there are a couple of topics on here that are going to be pretty robust conversations. Chief, why don't you come up? Let's do the your report and update.
Good evening.
Or actually, hold on. Wait a minute.
Sir.
Mike, do you want to do your thing before Chief gets into his classification? Because that would probably be a good background on that.
Well, talking about primarily with the exception of one person, he's talking about part-time employees that aren't covered by the wage and classification study.
Okay, so you're okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Chief. Thank you.
Good evening. I have a couple of things on the agenda, but first and foremost is the wage and classification schedule that I've presented to both the FinCom in the past and this board in various segments. I've created a new one trying to move forward, which I'm hoping that you'll vote on tonight. As I had presented before, it's budget neutral for FY18 due to the redirection of funding and scheduling and so forth. There are some small incremental changes trying to classify my part-time employees. I currently have 4 or 5 different types of employees. I have reserve dispatchers, reserve police officers, people who are reserve dispatchers and reserve police officers. Need another one? Yeah. Sorry about that. And so what I've done, and I've been trying to do since 2010, and with the personnel committee that's now no longer, as well as the reformation of our personnel handbook, is try to once and for all straighten this issue out. It's caused some attrition issues, as you're aware. The resignations that you heard tonight. I have another one pending for one of our reserves going to Lawrence. Another one just went to Peabody as a reserve. And on an aside, Ken Woodbury, my crossing guard, he did 10 years of service with the town. Crossing positions are very hard to fill. Ken had to step down for personal reasons. I do thank him for his service. It's a tough job out there for them. He was there every day, rain or shine, throughout 10 years of school for the students. And the last time I had a vacancy, it took 2 years to fill. So if anybody's watching who would like to be a crossing guard, you can call my office and I'll set you up in a flash.
I know we've posted that as
yes,
well.
Right? And it's been posted in several areas.
Yep.
But parlaying from that is the need to adjust these wages, and they're not large adjustments by any stretch if you look at what these folks were making previously from our previous discussions on it. And I think it's time, being I've been going at it for 7 years. I'm the only town department head who has been at these meetings, and this folder is reflective of it. These are the emails, these are the meetings that I've attended to try and fix this. And the last time in 2014 when we redid the personnel handbook, hoping there'd be an Appendix A or a B in there to make this happen, it's still not there. I'm asking, as the largest town department, to have a wage and classification schedule so I have something to start with. And even in the personnel handbook, it says that the Board of Selectmen can create a temporary wage compensation schedule so that we can move forward in some manner. We're very organized with our unionized employees, and it's very easy and succinct to track with our part-time employees. We don't have any baseline. This creates a baseline, but it also delineates those positions of responsibility from a civilian dispatcher to a sworn officer, someone who can do both, a utility player, as you would say, who's a viable employee, who can sit in either chair at any time. It's rare across departments our size to have those folks. I have those folks. Some of them are full-time firefighters and paramedics and EMTs, so they're very, very well trained in the area of public safety, and I would just like to balance that, and I've done so as I was charged to do by the FinCom in speaking with the chair in the last 2 years. I did it within budget for this year because the increases are so nominal by way of schedule. So I'm asking the board tonight to please take a look at this and provide me the ability to once and for all put this to rest. I know Mike has a presentation on the town hall side, but as a department head of the police department, I've been charged several times to get this to happen. Waiting for a one fell swoop to fix every single position here in Georgetown will be a stretch. I represent my department. I'm here to represent them tonight to get this to work.
Okay, discussion. Doug?
Chief, do we have
Yes.
these numbers are what you're proposing
That's correct.
increase. Do we have anything where are they now?
I had given that out a couple of meetings ago,
Oh, okay.
but I know them by heart. Currently, right now, the reserve dispatcher wage approved to work at $17.63 is also the reserve officer. I'm proposing it go to $18.50. Crossing guards right now make $11.32 an hour. I'm proposing $13. My assistant animal control officer makes $13. I'm used very sparingly to back up a full-time police officer who's the ACO, which is funded by the police department with no assistance, with its own budget, to $15.25. Assistant harbor master, which I'm going to talk about in another agenda item, creating a hourly wage of $17.85. It's seasonal. It's not part of the reserve force nor the full-time force. It's a position to assist as an assistant harbor master. And then you'll see the utility player, so to speak, someone that can do both jobs, which currently right now I have 9 people that can do both jobs, which creates the ability not to have 2 separate workforces. Otherwise, I'd need 13 part-time dispatchers and 13 police officers. I combine them both, and I have one person, 9 of them that can do both jobs. So if they come to work and I have a dispatcher who's unable to work, they can sit in the chair or sit in the car, to be blunt. And to have both of those trainings in this day and age, we have a full-time ambulance service. We're a full-time PSAP 911 center. They're a certified police officer, and they can sit in the dispatch center and coordinate with the dispatch center. It's a pretty valuable employee to have.
And Chief, you came up with a lot of these numbers for increases based on some work you've done behind the scenes from other
Surveys from other
towns
communities, yes.
and things of that nature, correct?
Yeah, so what I did was I contacted communities of similar size in our contiguous communities. Just as an example, the town of Newbury, 1972 for their reserves, Groveland, 1966, Hamilton, $20.36, Middleton, $22.40, Raleigh, $19.68, West Newbury, $19.35. Even with this increase, my officers are still going to be closer to the lower end of the totem pole, but at the same time, it shows some earnest attempt to try and level that playing field for us, maybe reduce some attrition and have some of my younger officers stay around a little while longer. And then some towns actually have a step and scale, going all the way up to $25 an hour, and some third step and scale for their reserve officers. You know, I'm just proposing a straight hourly wage. They don't get any benefits, so that I can have some type of semblance of a wage and classification schedule over there for our part-time employees.
Questions? Yes.
So, Chief, you have the job descriptions for each one of these detailed
Yes.
job descriptions. You know, I think you need the tools to get the job done right. I think you've done a tremendous job of balancing things off, and I know you've gotten to a critical point at the, right now where you're losing people, training them, losing them. My concern is overall is that I don't know what Mike's going to present, but what I would want to make sure that we're all using the same formula and criteria, because this may not be enough, in my opinion. This just may not be enough. If Mike's going to present to us something differently where he used, a different stratification, I think the town, at least the on the town side, the non-bargaining unit people should be all evaluated in the same way, and it should be consistent across the board. So I we'll see what Mike has to say, but I want to make sure that this is enough, and if it's not, that we address it.
Well, I
Again,
think, yes.
you may have used you know, the contiguous surrounding area. Mike may be using, I don't know what Mike can present tonight because I haven't seen it.
Well, I use the same, but as
Okay.
I stated earlier, these positions were not included in the study,
No, I understand that, but the
with the
way,
exception of the administrative
Administrative
assistant.
assistant, okay.
right, okay, as long as we're consistent, meaning, you know, the way you're doing it and the way, you know, the chief's doing it, should be consistent because they're all town employees, because I don't want a situation, again, I would worry about or be concerned about a discrimination issue, saying, well,
Oh,
you came up with your salary one way, you came up with your salary another way. It should be consistent across the board. This is the
Well-
way we do it.
Well, I think those, so, we've been doing this for 10 years.
Right.
And the last time we went at it was in 2011, and then we redid the personnel handbook in 2014. We're embarking on 8 years. I understand the consistency portion of that argument. What I'm trying to say is that even the personnel handbook allows for a temporary wage and compensation schedule that this board can enact and invoke. And then if they do a 3-year lookout and these people are still underpaid, I mean, the FinCom of the chair of the FinCom was on record saying, why aren't we just balancing at $20 an hour for all these employees if that's in fact the aggregate average? And I said, well, we don't need to do that right now. I would love to do that. But I can't do that within budget. What I can do is what I'm presenting to you tonight within budget, where there's no ill effect on the FY18 budget or moving forward because of the changes that we've made with our personnel, trying to dual train, dual cross train. And I know Mike has worked on it because I've been right there by his side. I've been at every meeting since 2010. I've been the only department head meeting to attend all of these meetings to defend their people. The only one. There's 5 of us. I'm the only one. And I keep working on it and working on it. And what I'm telling you right now is I'm at a crossroads with this. And I'm training people, spending thousands of dollars training new people every single year, when we may be able to balance some of that and maybe throw some of our good money after good.
And to the members of the board, I can't stress that point enough. I mean, I know that if there's any point, it's that one. I don't want to keep, pumping, money into a system to keep training these folks, and they're good people, and then losing them shortly after. I just find that to be completely wasteful, and we need to find a way, and maybe this is the way to keep some of these folks around a little longer.
Even the administrative assistant steps that I've taken across the board, even with our own employees, you're looking at an $8,000 to $12,000 disparity for people doing the same job for this position. And what I'm trying to do is at least balance that with a step and scale, so that when a person who has 27 years of service leaves, it hits the reset button and you earn that time. This is a time earned formula, which most positions like this have in place. You don't start at top step, you have to earn that. 5 years, 10 years, 15, 25 years at the same job. And proficiency is the key, and that's what's the key to the success of our organizations.
A couple of questions, if I may. One for the chief, one for Mike. So you feel all of this can work within your budget?
It's already done, yes. I presented it in the 2018 budget at FinCom.
Now the question is for Mike, as he had said, all of these don't affect what he has done, but whereabouts does this put the administrative assistant with what you have worked out and are gonna present later?
Right on target.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, and that's my point, because I want to make sure that the methodology Mike is using is the same methodology that the chief is using, and that we're not going higher here and less here.
Well, I think,
We've arrived at the same number independently.
and also too, I think people know that Mike and I are partners.
I think I'm 12 cents off.
Well, again,
All right,
Keep
I'll-
working at it.
sharpen your pencil. My HR.
That's pretty good.
My HR piece is coming out here, that we gotta make sure that it's consistent across the board. This can be temporary, but if we're gonna take a look at what Mike's doing, and those adjustments or monetary changes are higher because you use something different and the chief is using something different, could arrive with we could arrive with problems here. We could have a problem on our hands. Again, it needs to be consistent across the board.
Well, as far as,
Evaluating everybody the
and as
same
far as
way.
the part-time employees, it's the only part-time body that's not unionized in Georgetown. So that set rate is what we've come up with, and that's why when I worked with Mike concerning these rates, That's where we derive those numbers from. Not shooting for the sky, let's be realistic, but we can be pragmatic about it too, and realize that at the same time, taking this corrective action, and I will still be working with this folder, because I am the human resource component to the police department, connected to the personnel director. I mean, that's how I operate. I have to, I sit side by side with Michael to ensure that what we're doing is appropriate. We meet daily on our personnel. I mean, I have to ensure that exactly what you said, Mr. Surface, that we're in line, that we're not a rogue agency, or we're not rogue with our employees just because we're the police department.
Chief, do you truly feel that with these increases that we'll be able to maintain some of these folks a little longer? You know,
I do, and I think that, you know, based on fair standard labor and based on some of the changes we've made relative to the holiday schedule and doing the right thing with our part-time employees, because you're a per diem employee, part-time employee, whatever the personnel handbook may or may not define you as, you still can do the right thing for your employees so that you can create an environment where employees will stay and not look to a neighboring community or you know, create that relationship for Georgetown. We have very good officers here. I know that we don't have full-time positions for all of our part-time people, but we've had some pretty consistent turnover here in this community in the last 5 years since I've been the chief. More to come, as I just had announced earlier, about another retirement in March. And we choose from those reserve officers, and they're time-tested and vetted. So I, as the police chief making a recommendation to you, the appointing authority, I'm not bringing someone brand new off the street. We've had them in our community. We've tested them. And if it doesn't work out, they're certainly not going to be made full-time. So I think there's some communities don't do that. They just pick from the vine and try to find someone new. We actually take people that have been time-tested and vetted through our agency as a reserve officer, and that's important.
I don't know about the rest of the board, but, you know, the turnover concerns me. I actually, I've said it on many occasions, safety, I think, is the first thing that we should be concerned about in the community. And I think that constant turnover, you know, results in a you know, probably an escalated, what's the word?
Risk.
Yeah, all right, risk. You know, in terms of folks out there and in providing, you know, that level of service. So, you know, we need to really, as a board, you know, keep that in mind. That, you know, I'd like to bring that risk down, you know, as much as possible. And if chief is doing this within budget, you know, then, you know,
I think you can see by the numbers, it's not a lot of money. I certainly wouldn't be able to sit here and go $10,000-$20,000 and make an in-budget adjustment. What I've done is I've been able to move some of our assets around in our scheduling to be able to afford to do something like this, especially in the dispatch center. I mean, the dispatch center, this board has heard this numerous times, we've been short a full-time position in that dispatch. We only have 4 full-time dispatchers. We run on a part-time deficit, so to speak. We've never brought forward a 5th position, which probably will happen at some point with the addition of the ambulance and some of our other advancements. But having that, I need people to dispatch, but if they're also sworn police officers, then I can pull from that utility pool and not hire more people. You know, I don't want the police department to exponentially grow and have more people to manage. The more people to manage, the more risk, the more training dollars we spend, the less employees we have, the more productive we can be because we can hone in on the skills of the people we have. I could make the police department as a reserve force 50 strong, but I don't want 50 guns, 50 uniforms, 50 people, 50 performance reviews, all of that. We don't need that. We're trying to hone in on the skills that these folks have, and this will help hold that.
all right, is there any, okay.
One last comment. I hope this is enough to be competitive still. It's a start.
It's a start, and I think at least this document will be memorialized. You can see it has an effective date in it. It will be revised each year if, in fact, the board honors any type of COLA raise for these folks. So at least we have a document that's memorializing now a wage and classification schedule. We don't have one right now. If you asked me 5, 10, we would just knock off 1.5% down, and if someone said, where'd you get that number? I think someone just kind of made it up 10 years ago. Now we actually have something that is a start. It's a foundation. If it's not enough, then we have to examine that. But at least it's a start.
So keep us posted on it.
I will.
If that's the case. Steve?
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to say that applaud you for spending the last 8 or 10 years at this. I know.
I didn't want to photocopy this for you,
it could get
but it
pretty
exists.
frustrating. Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's. Yeah, I don't know what to say about the fact that we don't have this, but yeah, I echo the same concerns as Mr. Surface. I hope it is enough. I think we spoke before about, maybe giving some type of stipend and having them return it if they leave, but I think there's.
We have that on our full-time staff now.
Full-time, but
Anyone we hire,
Yep.
as of 18 months ago, signs a retention agreement. We get 3 years out of them, or they owe us the training and the academy funds back.
Yep.
Because we did have that unfortunate lateral that occurred.
Yeah.
Someone went back to their hometown. It was the first time we've had a lateral since the 80s. But that's, it has not happened. I saw it happen, and I'd just like to ensure the community that when we do hire someone full-time, that there is a retention agreement and some ownership to taking the position.
Sure. And
This isn't the private sector.
why can't you do that on the reserve police officers again?
They're employees at will.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I've been told by town council.
Okay. All right. So don't you
look-
let it? You spoke to town council
Yeah.
about it. Yeah, that's what I want to say. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I have no problem with this. I think obviously hopefully it's enough, because it's probably not helping morale, I would think, either, having people.
Well, being the lowest, I've championed the agency because we are a good police agency. On the flip side, when I go through the rest of my agenda, if you're below the median but above the lowest, it just gives something, But when you're the lowest of all, just the lowest, and you consistently stay there year after year, it's just hard to champion that.
Yeah. No, I agree.
All right, do I have a motion on this?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the Georgetown Police Department salary and wage classification as presented by Chief Cudmore with an effective date of implementation on August 27th, 2017.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Yes.
I quickly go. Come on.
I just wanted to affirm that I've lived in this community for 38 years, and for a vast number of those years, I've seen the police department be sorely underfunded and understaffed. And we got to begin bolstering that department, hiring people and getting their pay up. And I applaud you and thank you for the work you've done.
Thank you for the support.
Gary, quickly.
I just want to say, I thank him for championing and coming in here and doing this, and the fact that you can still run your department within the budget. But the budget is what I want to talk about, and that is that we still have a budget. And perhaps not so much this, because you can do this within budget, but when we get to the rest of it, I think a lot of this, we need to work in conjunction with the Finance and Advisory Committee on this, not two separate boards. There's a time where we need to start working together, and I think the wages and that is that point. But I can support the chief on this tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Fowler.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. So all those in favor?
Aye.
I
Opposed?
Chairman, I'm sorry, I want to thank the board, and specifically I want to thank the town administrator, because he does support my causes. You see when you come in the office, I'm in there a lot. I do interrupt his workday a lot with questions, and he does support the effort, and I wanted to thank him publicly for championing our cause as well.
Chief, we'll see you back here in 10 years, all right?
Yeah, pick a folder.
We'll take the folder, right?
You got more on here?
Yeah, I have a couple of things if you'd like me to continue, hopefully
Please.
not as long and as winded.
Please.
Mr. Chairman.
We had discussed the upcoming retirement and resignation, just so you're aware of those, which your board's notified when someone does resign. I'll if I can skip to number 6, the harbor master update. As with some other areas in our community,
I think I figured it out.
we have the police department's charged with running the harbor master program, and I am the appointed harbor master, and then I have assistant harbor masters, which I'm going to ask you to give me another one tonight. But lately we've had some concerns on our ponds, and rightly so. Some residents have raised concern with regard to damage to their property or improper operation of boats. I'm trying to get a handle on that. It's a program that's not funded, and I'm working with each individual resident on the pond, specifically Rock Pond this year. They tend to alternate when they have some problems. But I'd like to ask the board to take into consideration, worse than over-regulation is no regulation at all. And right now, we have some areas of concern with our boating community here in Georgetown with no regulation. There is some. One of our ponds doesn't have any. Been in touch with the Attorney General's office, been in touch with the environmental police, and it's a local problem, it's a local issue. I brought these issues to you before in earnest with regard to hunting and some other issues with land use, and it's not me to set the regulation. I need to look upon the executive level of our government to tell me which rules you want to enforce, what regulations you want in place so that our residents are happy and safe. And I think we've come to a point with Harbor Master duties and boating regulation in general. And I mean, there is mass general law pursuant to boating, but you need local control of your boating regulations. That a committee be formed and we look at regulating the ponds as the residents would see fit. I have my own opinions about it, but that's not what we're here for. We're here to see the folks that live in those waterways, the folks that their lives are directly impacted by the activity. I talked to another resident today. He sent me some pictures of a dock that's been damaged by boat activity on the water. I last week, maybe the week before, went out and set a no-wake buoy myself in my own boat because I found they got the Harbor Master boat running again to try and quell some of the issues out there. They're small bodies of water. There's some very large boats in those ponds, almost too large for the activity maybe that folks want to do, but nonetheless, they have the ability to do that. And what's happened is it's kind of reached the critical point that, you know, we have basically what I call neighborhood disputes on the water. We have people who live on the water who are having problems. And to intervene, I have Mass General Law on my side. I have the environmental police as some backup, but I don't have the regulations that some people want. I don't have some of the regulation that we need. So we need somebody to set the regulation that the folks on the water would be happy with.
Chief, what kind of issues are we talking about? I know boating, but you know, we're obviously talking about speed.
Speed,
right? The speed.
no wake, activity too close to the shoreline, beyond the 150. Rock Pond's unique. It has a cove. That cove measures about 480 feet wide, so I put a no-wake buoy in the center of it. May have caused some antagonists to act up a little bit on one of our weekends. I have some on video. I've talked to some folks that are in violation. I've always hoped the ponds would self-police. My job as the harbor master, working with Steve, was more environmental protection of the pond. We have a public boat ramp there on 97. I don't want people washing their boats in there. We don't want to disturb the milfoil or create an additional milfoil issue. The Rock Pond Association has worked very hard as a private organization to kind of capture that milfoil issue. So we're trying to work in concert with them. But again, it's an unfunded program. I have officers on the land. It's tough to fight the water when you're not on the water, so we're trying to get some exposure out on the water. Some of the residents have lived there a long time. I get varying degrees of stories as to what's right, you know, what's going on, what's right and what's wrong. So just looking for some guidance. I think that maybe it's time to at least create some regulation.
Doug.
Chief,
Yeah.
I don't know how many years ago it was, but a long time ago, I believe Mr. Fabiano was a harbor master. I thought at a town meeting, we passed a resolution of no more than 15 horsepower on these ponds.
Well, Baldpate Pond has a 10 horsepower. Rock Pond has no limit.
No, they don't.
No.
Maybe I was just thinking on Pentucket.
So the ponds have varying degrees of regulation, and what I would like to see, similar to our park and rec, is to try to balance that regulation. Take a look at the bodies of water. There are experts out there from an environmental protection standpoint, as well as a recreational use for the folks who live there. People have been as extreme to shut it down to all motor craft. I don't know where people want that. But what I'm in charge of is enforcing Mass General Law as it reads today, as well as any regulation that we can set forth to make it more enjoyable for the residents.
So your recommendation, Chief, is to form some kind of committee?
And hopefully we can have, I'll sit on that committee in an ex officio fashion where, just as a point of reference, with no, obviously no voting authority because I am a law enforcement officer, but just to assist in trying to move this forward.
Chief, has anybody that has filed complaints with you kind of backed you up on something like that they would actually want to be,
Well,
part of those boards?
I would think so. I mean, I have varying degrees of what folks think the pond should be about and what the use should be. So that's what made me pause and say, look at, you have very similar to when we use the conservation lands, whether motorized vehicles, horses, walking, things like that. The same thing would hold true for the water. Clearly, there are portions of that pond that can be used for motorized craft, to the extent of what people would like us to enforce. Funding, putting someone on the water. I'm trying to get people on the roads. I gotta put a guy in the water, so there's a cost to that too.
Need a boat for that. If you can only get one for nothing, that would.
I have a
help
boat.
everything.
I have a boat, and I did get it for nothing with the GSA website. So we have a boat
With a motor?
with a motor. We took it out the other day and talked to some residents, and that's why I need some help with someone who's just a harbor master, an assistant harbor master, so that I can not pull from my. The last thing I want to do is create more stress on my police force. I'm sitting here tonight telling you where the police force is at. If I can use a harbor master position, someone who's duly trained and has done it for me before, as a reserve. He's also a reserve officer in another community, so it's you have someone who's got experience in harbor.
Chief, does I know Henry, during the summer hours is helping over at ALP, right?
He's been down there a lot, yeah.
Is this something that could, because this is just for, say, well, no, it's longer than that. Well, what's the boating season?
The thing is, though, with Officer Olszewski, I've stretched him like Gumby. I mean, I've used him every possible place there is, and that's
All right, so that's where I was going with it. I didn't know if there was any
I've
more
utilized
time.
that officer about as much as I can.
Okay. No, I had to ask. So
And I'm trying to use more of an approach where it wouldn't affect my patrol or my dispatch staff or my officers. You won't be appointed as a police officer.
Okay, Gary.
Chief, I take it by what you're trying to come up with as a committee, maybe, I don't wanna read too much into it, but you're perhaps hoping for something that can come back to us to put something on for a town meeting.
That's correct.
Where bylaws need to be imposed in that, okay, and,
We're just weak in that area relative to local regulation.
to some of that, I think that's been tried in the past, to perhaps some of what Doug has said, and the fact that these are termed so-called great ponds, we also have to take some of
That's correct.
those state laws into consideration.
That's correct.
Yeah.
I mean, the simplified boating regulations, 150 feet, headway speed, things like that. There's been some educational portions of what I've done with some of the residents. I was invited to the Rock Pond Association meeting. They were kind enough to let me go. I was able to capture 4 or 5 residents there. I've been kind of taking my show on the road, so to speak, and trying to talk to everybody on the pond to ask, what are the issues, what are the concerns, where can there be improvement, and I can't be down there all of the time, every waking hour. We're trying to determine whether it's foreign boaters, so to speak, that are coming in that don't live there, versus folks who live there, and maybe there can be some self-correction and some self-policing so that people can get along.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that we even have to. It's too bad people just can't self-police themselves and have a good time and all that stuff. But if all this stuff is going on, it goes back to safety. Okay, whether it be on land or on water, this board has to do what it has to do to provide every bit of safety on the water than we do on land. So we'll have to talk further about it and try to put this in place. So, what would the steps be on doing something like this?
I guess we're gonna allow them to put together an, what do we call it, ad hoc committee to come back with recommendations for, spring town meeting.
Okay. All right. No vote is required for that, right?
We could probably vote. I'll second Gary's motion, which I think was to allow the police chief to establish an ad hoc committee to develop some rules and regulations regarding the ponds.
Recommend.
Okay. See how I set you up for that, Gary? All right. We have a motion and a second. Any other?
Motion, I made a second, yeah.
Any other comments, questions?
Do you have an idea of how many people should be on that committee?
I would acquiesce to you. I mean, you've probably had to establish bylaw committees before. You know, it's gonna be through the information that's conveyed by the committee will be brought to you.
We should do 5, and then it all,
So,
and then he would be a non-voting member, 6,
Right.
yeah.
well, he's a resident, he could vote.
I'd rather not.
If you hand pick them, 3 can move along quickly,
Yeah.
5 can.
I would recommend 5 myself, you know,
So, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we amend the original motion to make the number of positions to 5 on the
Second.
committee.
All right. So we have.
Vote on the amendment first, and then we
Yep. I was gonna say, so we have a motion, an original motion, in a second, so we're gonna have to vote on that first, okay? So all those in favor of that one?
Aye.
On the original one?
That's what you said,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
that's what we
right.
voted.
Now the amendment.
Okay, and then the amendment with the 5, right?
Right.
Okay, so we have a motion on that, was that seconded?
Yes, I
It
second.
was second, okay, so all those in favor of that one?
Aye.
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 Okay. All right, chief. Yeah, keep
Thank you.
posted on that.
Quickly on the accreditation update, the department was reaccredited again at the end of July. One of only 62 agencies in the Commonwealth to be accredited. It's our 5th award, which a program I started in 2007.
All right.
And that includes, in September, we get an insurance discount for that as well, for being accredited. To answer Mr. Surface's question, obviously, it includes self-assessment of all of our job descriptions and all of our operations through a 3-day examination from the Accreditation Commission. So that's been completed.
Congratulations, chief.
Thank you. Getting back on that harbor master situation, I was hoping the board tonight could appoint Jeffrey French from Ipswich as an assistant harbor master. He's a full-time Ipswich fire lieutenant who runs the Marine Division there. Coincidentally, the connection to get the buoy that I got from the town of Ipswich. Thank you, town of Ipswich, for getting me a buoy for free. It's a $500 item, and he will be able to help me with that program as well. So I would ask if the board could appoint him as an assistant harbor master. It's not a reserve police officer. It's an assistant harbor master position.
So moved.
So, what's his name, Jeff French?
Jeff
Do we
French.
have his
Address?
resume on this?
He was a former employee. He's worked for us before.
Term to expire for how long you want him in?
June 30th. June 30th. Just like the entire police
18th.
department.
You handle that.
All right, so, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we appoint Jeff French as an assistant harbor master with a term to expire June 30th, 2018.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks very much.
Within budget, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The American League Park update. The signs are being drafted. I met with the Park and Rec 2 weeks ago. They're attempting to redo some of the signage down there. Some of the regulations are getting put in place. I guess the final draft is being put forward for the code book for the town. So we're still waiting for that, but we have worked on that. Somebody wanted an update on that.
Chief, if I could start you there.
Sure.
Do we have to bring them in again? I mean, I think we had started this discussion last summer, and we're still not there.
2 summers ago.
Yeah.
Made some good strides, though. I have to
Did
say
make a
that
movement,
there have been some members there, Juliet Reck in particular, who's really moved it forward. We've got
I
the,
thought Julia resigned.
I guess, I can't get into that. I just know that she provides me information. So I work, in conjunction with the Park and Rec.
Well, should we be concerned about that? The member that's resigned is actually,
Make him move.
She's a volunteer, that's what I hear. She's a volunteer.
all right.
She's a go-getter, she gets it done, so, she's gonna get that information and we're moving
Because
forward.
not only did we have ALP there, we had, the dog park and,
Mm.
they had a lot on their plate, and again, a year later, we're still not there.
Maybe we should, maybe, Mr. Chairman, I would suggest we invite them in for October, just to give us an update of where they stand with all the issues.
October, I'd like to see them here as soon as possible.
Mr. Chair, if I might. I thought earlier in the year, maybe even last year, that we had talked about meeting with the different boards and committees on a quarterly basis, having them come in just to give us a report.
Yep, absolutely, that's a good point.
It would probably keep my agenda down for you too if I came in and,
That's a good point. So, if we could try to do that, now that we're doing that, are there any other boards we have to call in then? You know, we should probably look at that, as well, so. All right, Chief, go ahead.
I sent some potential transfers for some services over to Mike Farrell's office. We had an AC unit that let go at the PD. I'm using a portable that we use for a backup system in the EOP center, and a couple of other ones that may be coming in the future relative to the academy and so forth. I try to give them to Mike in advance so we know where we're at. Sometimes I can hit those targets like I did last year, and we don't need the money. But I just like to keep an active list going. It's awful early in the season to be talking about it, but didn't anticipate this equipment to go either, so those have been sent to Mike's office. On the parking ticket and bylaw ticket program, we've had to reorder our bylaw tickets. For those of you who don't know, in the animal control portion of my operation, we've been able to recoup thousands and thousands of dollars of fines that have been levied against folks relative to non-registration of animals violations, as well as non-payment of fines. And we've done so. However, we've utilized every book that we have and included in the parking ticket program. They're very expensive to order. For the both of them, it's a $1,900 tab to pay for those parking and bylaw books, something that's clearly not budgeted. And the fact that it is a revenue generating program, I'd like to try to get some help and get some of that money back to pay for those. The last time we ordered these was in like 1990, so they do last a long time. But with, you know, we've had some overwhelming issuance with the ACO program. We've been able to take down a list of almost 400 or 500 unregistered animals down into about 40. So the program's working. It's a pet peeve of mine, no pun intended. Unregistered animals are problematic for us, and they're problematic for the public. If your neighbors have dogs that aren't vaccinated and they're not registered, we don't know what's going on. So we work very closely with the town clerk, and our ACO officer has done all of that labor for her. I don't look at it as a revenue generating program. That's not what it's for. I don't care about the money portion of it. We just want compliance, that's all. That's dangerous in policing when you think our activities are revenue generating. There's a consequence to someone's actions, and if there's a revenue stream attached to that, that's for the town to use in the general fund. But I'd like to try to recoup that $1,900 because I don't have an extra $1,900 to print books. With motor vehicle citations, the Commonwealth gives them to us because there's a whole revenue stream on that side. So I'd look to do that in the fall as well.
Come on, Chief. Gary?
Just a question for Mike on that. I mean, I guess what he brings in ends up going in as general funds as free cash and at the end of the year. So there's really no budget for it this year. We'd have to do a line item transfer, I guess.
Or a reserve fund transfer.
Reserve fund transfer.
I'm going to order the books who need them, and
Yep.
we're going our cycle of registered dogs to get another
So
people.
budgetary, you don't see it as a problem, I take it?
No, Don gave me 5 requests today, and some of them, you know, we might end up, as he stated, it's too early in the process. The finance committee is gonna say, well, okay, we see what you're requesting, come back in May or when you get into a
See where we're at,
deficit, and see if you can handle it in the current budget, or do we need to make transfers?
It makes us sharpen our pencils, or what it makes us do.
Okay.
And, so
But
that
it
it's
puts
coming.
It puts them on notice, so it sort of like reserves some of the reserve.
I reserved the reserve, and then in May, hopefully that you remember that way back in September I told you. And 2 more items, and I'll leave you alone. I also got a message from the building inspector and the conservation agent concerning livestock regulations that we've been, or lack thereof. And I think what we're finding in some of our areas of bylaws is that, like I say, worse than over-regulation is no regulation because you're just out there. We have that now with some livestock issues that the building inspector and the conservation agent have brought forward, as well as the health agent. So coupled with the ponds and our public parks and now that, you know, there's some work to do there. I just wanted to put that on the plate of things that we probably should be looking at in the very near future, because the silence is very difficult to police, and it creates more angst with the boards and the folks who are in charge of these things.
So the question that I have on that though, Don, is how do we put those together? I mean, you know, I don't think anybody.
Maybe I could
on
ask
here-
my friend Steve from Conservation to enlighten us on something that would happen.
Please,
with
that'd be,
regard to-
any insight would be
I
great.
believe it's just, the planning board has to open up discussion and create regulations related to it and get feedback from parties. That's typically how that type of bylaw would be created.
Because the town is radio silent on it, so we don't have any.
There's no one that's bringing it forward, there's no residents, we're trying to work with residents that are having issues. I think it has to come from the planning board.
What kind of livestock issues are we
Got a couple cows, couple of horses, a lot of roosters, noise complaints from roosters. A lot of requests for bees on the community gardens, beehives. So it you know, goats are becoming very popular. You know, a lot of these animals are very trendy, so we're getting a lot more concerns and complaints and requests to come on.
But I guess that's what I mean. I mean, what, do you go through every single animal and say, all right, you know, you can have
So this regulation
so many
would,
chickens here, or so
yeah,
many roosters?
typically so many large animals, hooked animals per acre, so many chickens per acre. I've never seen bees regulated, to be honest with you, but with people being allergic, we have to probably look at that.
Now,
I get a lot of requests to put them on town land. The answer's been no at this point, because we don't have any regulations. So it's just a straight no.
is that something where we're gonna maybe look at another town, see what they have?
Yeah,
in
we're not gonna
place?
reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
We'll just copy and paste and change them.
Okay.
Modify it to whatever our needs are. I mean, it'll be different zones, downtown will be different, just like the zoning regulations.
Well, especially with the, you know, livestock, you know, the chickens are really popping up everywhere.
You can get eggs all up and down
and-
North Street.
You know, and then.
But what happens is it
turns
regulates
into health issues that.
noise complaints, number of animals. I mean, you know, a couple a while ago I had chickens,
tough
you
when
know.
they try to cross the
Chickens
road.
are noisy, roosters are the worst.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks because you have, you know, chickens and hens that they don't make any noise. They're allowed to.
Yeah.
Your neighbor will tell you and attest to it.
You also get rodents.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
certainly,
it's just
in
something that we
support of
thought that
that
we
as
need to look
well,
at.
so, you know, let's figure out what we need to do for process and, you know, let's get it done. You know, that about it.
I got a question. Are we, I know we're still considered rural by USDA, but are we that rural that we should consider like a right to farm bylaw like they have in here?
Agriculture is allowed in any zone by right.
Well, that would just be, because they use that in Newbury to inform new residents that there may be certain aromas that come from certain animals or noise. That,
I bring it to the board's attention because on a Saturday morning when something scuffs up, who do you think they call? The police department. Yeah, they call the police department and, you know, you send your officers out to keep the peace, maybe use some type of reasonableness for the problem at hand. Maybe if we could maybe take and examine the potential for regulation. The building inspector and Steve brought it to my attention, and I said since I had the ear of the board tonight, I just dropped that quarter in the bucket too.
It'd be very helpful.
No. Yes, Steve.
I alluded to it earlier. If you're comfortable talking about the harbor boat, I think it's important that everyone is aware of how you were able to get it, and
Oh, yes.
I mean, I think that was a great.
You know, we had a piece of
great find.
aging equipment that we were using, and I went through the GSA and put a zero bid on a piece of equipment that was worth about $8,000 and watched with angst about my zero bid to see if it would hold, and lo and behold, after keeping an eye on it and seeing the other bids, because, you know, we were from the Commonwealth, on boats that had been paid for once by the Commonwealth, I was able to win that bid and get that piece of equipment. I just had to go to Wellfleet, Massachusetts, and pick it up, so I did. And the schools were gracious enough to let me use their brand-new Ford F-250, because I knew they had it, so I asked them to use it. So Mike Anderson let me use that, and we got it back. So it's donated lettering by B&B Auto. So we were out in it last week, and we hope to get some exposure out there and help the residents. And it will go a long way, and it didn't cost us anything.
Yeah, that was great. That was a smart play on your end, so.
And then the only other thing that I was about the Seabrook situation, but I don't know where you are in your agenda with that. I can stay and wait for that discussion, or?
Sure. Well,
Stand
so
down.
that's regarding the letter, or is it regarding?
Yes, it was on the, and I didn't, on the.
I know you and I
wanted to be here for that.
discussed, having a session during the fall, about educating, the public, which is still, going to be a conversation that we're gonna have.
Do anything you need. Yep, we can do anything
in
you
the
need.
fall, we'll try.
I brought the plans, I know that there was an article in the newspaper about the, a hearing and some other communities, so I stand ready to answer whatever questions, and
All right, well, the next topic, you all set?
I am, sir.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen.
Thank you, we really
You need to
appreciate
stick around for Seabrook.
If you can,
I will.
that'd be great. So, and actually, yeah, if you stick around, we can certainly do that. Okay, yeah, why don't we go to that Seabrook letter? Okay, so, a few months back, we had a presentation made. We actually, as a board, discussed a visitor's concern, that he voiced, at the meeting, and we also reviewed a letter that was written, by State Senator Bruce Tarr, and I forgot who the other person was.
Representative Hill.
Thank you, Representative Hill. So, and we did vote to support that letter to communicate, to the NRC our concerns. So we're going to just review that letter tonight, just to get any questions, comments answered, and if the letter is acceptable, get a sign off on that letter to send out. The letter is in everyone's packet, but I am going to read it for our public out there. And it reads this way. Dear Ms. Chairwoman, we are writing in concurrence to a letter sent to the NRC by our state senator Bruce Tarr, dated April 13, 2015. In that letter, Senator Tarr requested that you hold a public hearing at a location within the 10-mile radius of the Seabrook, New Hampshire power plant to explain in detail how the evacuation plan is designed to work, particularly during the usually heavily crowded summer months. We believe a hearing on the issue will help prevent any misinformation from creating concern or alarm within the 10-mile radius and directly outside the radius where Georgetown is located. Thank you for your consideration of our request. Please feel free to contact us directly should you have any questions. Sincerely, the Georgetown Board of Selectmen. So that is the letter that we are prepared to send. So I'm going to open it up to discussion, questions, and then we will go from there. So, Steve?
Yeah, I think, just kind of giving a recap of when we had that meeting, I had voted against. I just want everyone to understand that I think it's an important issue, but I think that our representatives address the issue, and I think that's kind of the hierarchy of who should respond, and I think they did that, and they represent our district, and I just didn't feel a need that we needed to as a town draft a letter. So that's the reason why I didn't support it.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I was not present for that meeting also, so I question why we're getting involved when we're not within the 10-mile radius, unless we feel that Senator Tarr should have opened up that radius to, to all of his district. So, so I just question that. I don't, we're chiming in on something within the 10-mile radius, and we're not even within that 10-mile radius. So that would be my concern.
Okay.
But
Doug?
I would say that although they're asking for a hearing for the evacuation plan within the 10-mile radius, that there would be an impact on Georgetown because we're so close to it. All we're really doing is lending our voices as a governing body to encourage the NRC to hold a public hearing. That's all we're asking to do. Anything with relation to the town and the town's plans is a separate issue that we can certainly handle with education to the community.
Yes, Derek.
I'll chime in. We are in an evacuation zone. We're in the 10 to 50 mile evacuation area zone. And I believe that night, back in April, the chief gave you all a packet. I don't know if anybody looked it over, but he had I think you included a DVD for everybody, didn't you, on your, I
Yes,
thought you did that night, yeah.
Some of those.
And the evacuation zone goes further than the 10 mile. That's, or what do you call it?
EPZ zone.
What does that refer to?
Evacuation plan.
Yeah, so we are in an evacuation plan zone, we're just not within the 10-mile limit one. We're in, I think that one goes out 10 to 50.
And we have 2 traffic control points.
Yeah.
I think probably, from my perspective, as your emergency management director, I've spoken to each one of you separately on the issue, is in our business with MEMA and FEMA and emergency management, everything is a regional concept. We get assets regionally, we work regionally because that's where we can draw from if we need particular assets, including evacuation. We are regulated with our evacuation plan by MEMA and FEMA and the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. I have the information that was provided to me by the Raleigh resident that presented to you. I've never personally met with him. I fall back on those agencies for guidance. And looking at potentially having a hearing or looking at our evacuation zones, I've spoken to all of the police chiefs in the area and the EMDs, not all of them are police chiefs, some are fire chiefs and some are civilians. And that going at it alone would make very little difference, that I would rather go within a regional concert with that, using our, we're a local community, we would use the state. We have senators and House of Representatives and the Executive Office of Public Safety that we work within as our partners moving that forward to the federal level. I don't know, I have our local plan, but it's driven by that regional plan.
Well, sometimes somebody has to step forward for the other ones to go, oh, somebody has to go down and start the fire at a campground, all right? And as it gets a little bigger, more and more people come in. So this is really just, so we step forward, and my understanding is some other communities may be considering doing the same thing. I really don't see any harm in having the NRC be informed that the local municipalities within this whatever range have would like them to have a public hearing to go over the evacuation plan. To me, that's totally common to have an evacuation, just let them know what the evacuation plan is. Anything beyond that.
And this letter is just supporting that letter that Senator Tarr has already sent out. So, it's not a huge letter. It's very to the point. And I think, just sending it off, does specifically do that, to say, maybe here's some information on this.
Just a little more. I mean, I thank you for putting this on the agenda tonight, and I agree somewhat with what the chief and Doug have said, and I know that you have been working with the chief to plan some type of a, I don't know if you're thinking of a town meeting type situation, I mean, a town hall type situation, or what, but I would like to perhaps see if we want to invite some other towns. I do know, I was in touch with Senator Tarr's office on this, and that letter was written very seriously. They would be glad to come out. Seemed more like they would also rather see a regional type of meeting, that they would probably send a representative on this. And also, if we could perhaps with this, if we move this forward, carbon copy it to Mass Attorney General Maura Healey, and that comes from Senator Tarr's office, as what they said, because this is more on a national level, with they're the state senator, they don't really have that much authority, but and what they told me was that the Attorney General's office would be the one that, so if we carbon copied that to the Attorney General's office, and I do know that they've been getting other messages from other towns there also.
I mean, is that something else that the board has to, I mean, I think the vote was to send the NRC the letter. Does the board have an issue with that?
I think the only thing that I question is, I believe this individual is a candidate for president. So we just want to make sure that we're not endorsing any political
He didn't
statement
mention
there.
his name in the letter, so that, I think that's a good part. Some have
Okay.
mentioned that. I'm sorry if I'm
Because it could be a
speaking out of
conflict of
turn.
interest, yeah, if we're,
We are just referencing Senator Tarr's letter here.
well, yeah, I think he references the gentleman's name, and I just want to make sure that we're not violating any conflict of interest laws for that. But
Mr. Chairman, may I ask? Yes, I don't have a copy of the letter, nor, I don't know the content of it, but if the letter is a driver for potentially getting people together, then who's in charge of that? I mean, is that something, as the emergency management director now, that I am endorsing to have to attend hearings or meetings? Where is it as far as, what are we prompting? Because I usually report to MEMA, or I report to the Executive Office of Public Safety, so is it gonna be me who represents the town in the letter? I guess I'm confused with that part.
With the letter, we're just, we are.
Who gets put on notice if there's a hearing? Is it?
We're just
Selectmen?
backing up that letter, that was sent out, chief.
Okay.
And, as far as anything we put together as a town, in the fall, if that does come around, we'll have a conversation about
Okay,
that.
I just wanna know if
I'm not-
if there's responsibility driven back to the E&D position relative to the
Yeah,
letter.
I'll be honest with you, a regional.
I need to
thing
create a file,
sounds-
and I need to know where
Yeah, a
we're
regional
at.
thing sounds nice, but I'm not sure if we want to get that heavy into it.
Okay.
At least initially, it might turn into that, but that's going to create, maybe a lot more than we want to take on. So, Doug.
Should this ever come about with a hearing, then that may provide you with, now you know what that is, and it may drive some changes or enhancements to what you already have.
Thank you.
Sure. All right. So we have the letter. I've read it. We've discussed it. Do we have a motion to approve this letter to send out?
I have a question.
Any further discussion?
Are we going to forward this to Attorney General Healy?
Again, our vote was the NRC. I don't know if anybody else has any questions or issues with that. I would actually personally say no. I voted to send it to the NRC period.
This is a recommendation of Senator
Correct.
Tarr's office?
I'm okay with it, just to get this
Oh,
letter.
no, just
out.
asking a question.
Yeah, I believe my conversation there with AJ was
Okay.
that the Attorney General is probably the best push to get the hearing. But,
Okay.
I mean, I'm happy to just move this letter forward at this point. And if I may have one more question for the chief. I don't know, you want to have
Sure.
deep vote or?
No, go ahead, ask your question.
It was just, you know, I think this might be some of the questions that come up if we hold a meeting. And I went over that with you, you gave me a lot of information, I read it, I watched the thing, I think it was about 2 hours long. And we're called, our 10 to 50 mile is called a stay in place. Would we be allowed to leave if something were to happen? That's a question I have when they say that you are a stay in place area, because if something happens, the first thing I want to do, even though I'm not within the 10 miles,
The recommendations with regard to sheltering in place, whether it be a natural disaster or a situation like this, you would be able to leave if you wanted to. If the recommendation is to stay, then obviously that would be the recommendation made by the folks who have their finger on the pulse, so to speak, as to what's going on. And then if there's an evacuation, just as you've seen on television, people who are ordered to evacuate don't leave. And then what happens, right? So I think that it's a tough question, but if you wanted to leave, there's no martial law in my mind that would exist to force you to stay in your home, no sir.
I mean, I think this is perhaps some of the questions that might get asked if
And I do, I'm sorry, sir, that the website from the governor's office, from mass.gov, covers a lot of these questions. There's a question and answer on the website. It's very in-depth, as well as the calendar that Seabrook puts out. They are information driven. I mean, because that's obviously how they push their message. So I would also refer folks to that, as I do often. And then like I say, I would use my partnership with MEMA to put on any type of informational session that you would want, as well as the folks that have provided that training for us yearly, which is actually coming up again in November.
You know, hypothetically, Mr. Chairman, if they do come in and do this, it's a discussion about within the 10-mile radius. They don't have to answer anything above and beyond that. So, for me, I wish Bruce's letter, Senator Tarr's letter said, including the 50-mile radius. And then I would support it. Otherwise, we're supporting something that we're not part of. So, for me, I can't support it at this point.
Okay. Well, we have the letter. Again, the vote was already taken to send the letter. I mean, it's just more, to send this specific letter, correct?
Yeah, I was directed to draw up a draft
Yeah. So,
for approval.
so unless there are changes that you want to make to the letter,
I would only suggest that we include Representative Hill's name, because that was in the letter from Senator Tarr as being drafted.
do we have to
Sign it, though? If he didn't sign it, you
Yes, he
shouldn't. Did he? Was it co-signed?
The only reason why I omitted his name is because he's not our rep.
No, he's not, but he's a representative of the House of Representatives.
this is it. They're gonna,
Also, Sheriff Cousins was in favor.
former Sheriff Cousins, yes. So that's, I mean, the letter is 2015. I think we're just, I'm fine with this as it's written.
Okay. So listen, we have a motion and a second on the floor. So let's vote the letter as it is written, and then we'll see where it takes us. Okay. So all those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Okay. 3-2, it passes. So we'll send this letter out. Okay, and we'll move on. All right. Just quickly, Board of Selectmen fall meetings. They're right there for you. October 16th, 30th, November 13th, 27th. December 4th and 18th. All right. So to the town administrator's report, Mike is going to talk about our wage and classification study, an important topic that we need to get ahead of and really have some pretty blunt discussion. So, Mike.
Thank you. The purpose for having a wage and classification study, or for doing this study, are twofold. One, the town has not updated its wage and classification plan since 2003. I did submit similar study in 2010 to the then Personnel Board, and they did not take any action. Opportunity came up, and the second reason, as the state legislature passed a new law. Well, they amended the Massachusetts Equal Pay Law, and they're going to be taking a look at public payrolls as they relate to actually gender equality. And if you're found to be not in compliance with yet to be made regulations, then you're subject to wage discrimination and lawsuits to follow. I sent this draft study to legal for their review to see if it complied with the new law.
And the new law might be effective when?
Actually, it's July of 18. Let me double check. Yep, July. The new law goes into effect July 1 of 2018.
Okay.
So basically his response was, in general, I believe the proposed study with certain amendments will serve as a strong indicator that the town has conducted a timely self-evaluation of its pay practices. However, in reviewing the proposed plan, there are a couple of issues I wanted to bring to your attention. The first is that any self-evaluation for the purpose of compliance with the Equal Pay Act should be tailored toward uncovering and addressing pay disparities based on gender. When you do a classic wage and classification study, you divorce the person from the position, and you look at only the position, because you want each and similar positions to be paid the same. You make up the differences in level of, well, experience and additional certifications, things like that, through a step plan. But in this case, the new law and what legal counsel is suggesting is that when they come up with guidance from the Attorney General's office, that we would be in a position to legally address what the law wants us to do. They haven't said what they really want us to do, according to legal counsel. But as I said, as he said, this is a very strong indicator that, you know, we're taking our pay practices seriously. That being the case, I want to just go over the methodology of this study. It's, as I said, it's a classic study. My prior life, I was a wage and classification specialist for a municipal consulting firm, and I've done wage and classification studies all through Massachusetts. I was able to participate in a survey. That's one of the first steps you do. You survey your local labor market, meaning you look at towns that are similar location, where people in this area would travel and go to work. And you also look at, you want to make sure they're similar size. We're not going to compare ourselves to Haverhill or Lawrence or Methuen. We're going to compare ourselves to towns similar to us in population and in spending. So as I stated, we got to participate. We were asked to participate in a local wage study in FY17. So by participating in it, I had access to the data. That in and of itself is a very lengthy process. When I did a wage and classification study, it took a minimum of 4 months to conduct, because the biggest first step is getting the responses from the towns that you need to get data from. So I was able to short circuit the process considerably. Plus, a lot of the work I did in 2010 was still valid, and you'll see as I go through the methodology why those types of things didn't change a lot. So the first thing to do is get your data from a survey. You're going to want to look at external factors, which the study does, and then you have to look at internal factors, because to do that, you the first thing I did, the next thing I did was, if you go to Appendix A, I did a test on all the positions to make sure we were following the Fair Labor Standards Act in how we paid being exempt or non-exempt employees. Basically saying, are we paying people by the hour or by salary? And there are certain qualifications. You might be paying somebody salary, but they may not be qualified by the FSLA to be paid salary, and you should be paying them hourly. Luckily, I did not find anybody that any positions that violated the FSLA. We were right on target there. Then I had each and every employee fill out this position description questionnaire, Appendix B. And all these questions actually have they tie into how the position actually is scored. You reduce the positions to a objective, quantifiable, numeric score. That's how you take the person out of the position. You make an objective analysis of it. Where people were not department heads, their we had the department heads review the position description questionnaire for accuracy and truthfulness. Frankly, though, most of the employees here are single-person departments, and so I sat down and actually interviewed every employee at the time. And the fact that the different employee might not be here really, because doesn't, I don't believe matters very much, because the positions don't change over time. We do ask them to do more than they're actually paid to do, but we don't really count all those quote extras they do. We're looking at the minimum qualifications for each position. That's it. That's the other part, that you have to separate the position from the person holding the position, because the person may have a master's degree, but the minimum requirements for the job is only a bachelor's degree. So you don't get points for having a master's degree unless it really calls for a master's degree. Or you don't get points, you know, if you're the incumbent and you've been in the position 25 years. It doesn't matter. What is the minimum standard for hiring that position? If they only need 2 years of experience and a high school education, then that's how you score the position. And we use a scoring system that's been a standard scoring system in HR for as long as I've been doing it. And I've included a copy of a job rating manual. There are 9 factors, and the factors are weighted. Some being deemed, you know, more important or more useful in a certain position. So once you have the position description questionnaire, then you go to the rating manual and rate the position. Once you have the rating, job rating factors, then you create your first part of a classification system by valuing and ordering the positions. The positions with the higher point total almost always get paid more than the lower job rating factors. So you create this in Appendix D, a ranking of the positions, and then you go and look at the salary data. The salary data came from 13 communities. And in this case, and in most cases, you average out the pays, the high and low of each type of position. That's what's reported by the town. Some towns don't have scales. They just have whatever the employee gets paid, and that gets entered into as actual. Some have multiple employees in the same position, so you pick the high and the low, of those multiple employees and then create your own mean or average for that position. So in the salary survey data, Appendix E1, you'll see L and H, low and high. Some of them, if they just have a single actual that just got assigned, that's the highest. So you look at all the data. The more data points you have, the better the more accurate you and more confident you can be in the actual salaries, in the actual data. Some positions, some towns don't have the same positions, and you really do need to compare apples to apples. So we'll, you know, a position that only has maybe 2 data points, that data might not be as reliable as some positions that have 11 and 12 data points. But there's ways to correct that too, correct for that as well. So I look at the salary data and then analyze that and see how it compares. Compare the salary, the survey data to the actual pay of the town employees. And you can, and most studies do a 50th percentile, 75th percentile, 90th percentile. But some towns, believe it or not, you know, their philosophy is we pay, you know, more than average, or we want to be the highest paying to attract the highest, to attract the best employees too. But that's a budgetary decision and it's a philosophical decision. In my analysis, I just used the 50th percentile in comparing. So we're no worse and we're no better than any other town in comparing. So from that analysis, along with the position scoring, you actually then are able to come up with a classification plan. It's Appendix F. So you group similar positions in that classification. Some areas it's just a gut call. Some areas, you know, if your scoring is done accurately, then you can have confidence that, for instance, like job class C, you have most of the positions there are small departments, either one-person departments or very small departments, because you get scored on the number of people you supervise too. So that's why you see, you know, the 2 chiefs in the top category, because they well, number one, they need a lot of experience. They need a lot of, given the individual scores in each classification too. So when you review it, it should make, you know, it should make sense. You know, and then you have all the different administrative assistants, even though their, you know, their primary duty may be a little bit different. The planning secretary, you know, does things different than the building secretary, but there's still, and actually they all had different titles. None of them had the same title. So I'm recommending they all be reclassified as administrative assistants. But you can see their actual scores are, you know, within 50 points of each other. So that clearly indicates, and this is where, you know, we're gonna have some of the most trouble, we could have the most trouble with that new law, because they're looking to see if women are not being paid the same as men either. So in these classifications ratings, you know, if you look at this, administrative secretaries are actually score higher, or as the same as a police officer. Police officers, now our standard is higher. Most of our police officers start with a college education, but the minimum requirement is a GED. You can become a police officer in Massachusetts with a GED. So when people look at that, they may say, "What the heck? Is he crazy?" But that's the reason. So try to get everybody with the same scores in the same class, and then this proposed classification plan is for the purposes of getting them on a plan. I'm not proposing that we have a 12-step, I'm not even proposing steps. I'm just saying this is where people need to be in this classification plan. You can then use it for differentiating for, you know, superior performance. You know, if they have a really good performance evaluation, or picking up extra certifications, things like that. But this is just set up for getting them on a scale, and then yet to be determined how the scale will continue.
Mike, I have a question on this particular document. So you got S's and X's beside people. That,
Salaried and exempt.
okay. So if you're gonna do 12 steps, step 6 should be the median, which is, well, the average. And then you go up and down from there. So have you determined what classifies somebody as being a step 1?
No, like I said, this is, I look at their current, I look at their current salary and compare it
To what though?
to the
Average, which to me,
average,
which I
yeah.
don't like. Because if again, if a step 6 is somebody that's right in the middle, right? Wouldn't you think that I think you should establish criteria for what a step 6 is. So in order to be in the middle of the average, you have to have 10 years experience in this, you know, here, and maybe look at prior experience and discount that 3 to 1 for a number of years.
Now you're getting into the person.
No. But,
Yeah,
but
if you're looking at experience.
no. Forget the people. To be a step 6, you have to have worked 10 years as the town accountant, right?
But I'm just saying, this is just for getting the right salary. There's no steps. This is just where they start, and you develop a step plan later.
Well, when I don't like comparing it to the average. If you look at that last page, you're comparing everybody to the average. Whether they're in the, you still have to establish criteria for length of service or length of experience. So if you were
We're not
hired,
doing that. That's the next phase.
Right.
This is just to get people,
When I
just to
did it,
create
he was
a
working on-
classification plan of, okay, class range from $45 an hour to $60 an
right,
hour.
in order to get $45 an hour, you meet the minimum requirement and the minimum experience level. So if you hire, just an example, a town accountant that had has all the minimum requirements, which means they have at least 3 years of experience, right? If that was the criteria, then that person should be step 1 coming in. They're basically entry level. If you're hiring a person that has 15 years experience, they probably would be at the halfway point, which would be a step 6, which would adjust this from $45. It happens to be the midpoint, right? Looking at the town accountant, that's the number that you would start them out at. I use the same exact thing in my operation. So if we were hiring a staff accountant right out of school, with the bachelor's degree and maybe 0 to 6 months experience, they're starting at step 1. If I was hiring a staff accountant that had 5 years experience and met all the minimum requirements, they're starting at a step 6. If they're 15 years in the job, they're starting at probably step 12. So it's not the person, it's the qualification of having that, whether you're male, female, or not, doesn't matter. The only thing that really matters is the years of experience, so that when you come in, you're hitting the ground running. If you're there 15 years, if you're a 0 to 6 month person, then the pay should be less. And then you work every year. Not only is there a COLA, but you adjust this. This is a snapshot in time. You should be adjusting it probably every 2 years and giving salary adjustments as you go.
Yep.
So
I agree with you, but that's not what I'm trying to do here.
Okay, well
I'm
then,
not
then you're confusing me.
I'm creating a starting point for these positions.
Which is that you're going with the average.
Yeah.
I don't agree with that.
Well, we have to
You should
fix
establish-
that first.
Well, I think you should
gotta
establish
have
the criteria.
We have equal pay first, and then worry about.
But who says average is
Yeah.
equal, Mike? Somebody here that's 25 years shouldn't be making the average. They should be making probably 90% of the average, 120% of the average. I don't think average is the number. I really don't. I think you should go back and look at the scale. So if it's $25 to $50, the max step is $50. That if you're here and we say, and this is where this is where the experience level has to come in. You say somebody to be at step 12 has to have 20 years experience, like you, right? You have 20 years experience. You've met the job minimum qualifications, but you have 20 years experience. Obviously, you should be at the top of the scale. You should probably be at 12. Establish the criteria for those. Cut it down to 10. Cut it down to 8. That's up to you. But I don't like using the average, because if we use the average for you, obviously it's off. But probably you shouldn't be making the average. You should be making above the average because of the level of experience that you have and the level of experience on the job. You're shortchanging yourself in that case. Somebody that's brand new that only has 3 years experience as a again, I'm back to town accountant. I'm just using that as an example. If you hired somebody that was 3 years over at another town and you hired them in, you're not going to start them at the median. You're going to start them, based on the criteria established, so there's no discrimination. That you only have 3 years experience, you're coming in as a step 2 versus the median. You're starting people off at step 6 with this. And you're shortchanging the people that have been here, like the chief, a long time. Again, those are contractual. You guys are contractual. It's a little bit different, but, So for me, I'd rather see you establish those steps using the low and the high. Obviously, somebody here with 20 years should be on the high. And you're only looking at it through the average. That's just my opinion. So.
Mr. Chair, can I just?
It works.
follow up here? Just to your question there about the average. So if I were to look at that last exhibit there,
Yeah.
what conclusion then do I draw for, I think there were about six.
This thing is giving me a crick in my neck. It's almost
Six
as bad as.
positions that the average was below what the rate was that they're getting now. So what conclusion do we draw there? Do we say that they're overpaid, or?
Yes.
And it would reduce their
No,
salary?
when you haven't done one for such a long time, you hold them harmless and,
Look at a bonus situation rather than a step
a
increase in share.
longevity. You,
Right.
you basically say, you're at the top of the scale, and you can get longevity pay, but you don't, or you get but yeah, eventually you have to max out. Because a town our size can only afford to pay somebody, I can't believe, this is coming out of my mouth, but, that's the reality. If you want to make more money at a certain point, then you go to a bigger town and they'll pay you more money. That's the way municipal government works.
But what will move it up, though, is every year, the jobs don't stay stagnant. So you would assume, just again, assume that each one of these is gonna move up by 2.5 to, probably between 2 and 3%, because everybody's probably gonna get a raise. The point is, though, at
Well, it's
times.
called, cost of living
Right,
adjustment.
Right, but there is also situations where different towns are looking for different expertise, i.e. if we were to go out and hire an IT director, those positions change, not 2% per year. Sometimes they go sky high, sometimes they come back down. So there's also some market fluctuation in there rather than just the COLA. So that's why, this is a snapshot in time. I think if we're gonna do
That's
this.
exactly right. It's
Right.
just what
Right.
things are right now.
Right, right, and I think.
I agree with David, but how do we do it today if we post a job? Isn't there a range that we say between whatever?
No, we say whatever it's budgeted
This is
for.
what you get
Not
paid.
to, we just say not to exceed.
Not to exceed, right,
Yeah.
so it's up to a certain amount.
Yeah.
So that's,
So as an example, if somebody walked in here that had 3 years' experience, right, and somebody walked in that had 15 years' experience, are you gonna give them the same pay because that's what's budgeted?
Yeah.
Yeah, which
Really?
really
Oh,
is,
geez,
yeah,
yeah.
well, again, I think this will give us
Our
the,
hands are tied.
why? Just because it's budgeted doesn't mean you pay that whole salary.
No, I could pay less.
Right, up to.
Yeah.
That's why I think putting those steps and some criteria to those steps would give you some real good ammunition and direction, so we're not being discriminatory and are just giving everybody budget. I think that would help a lot for you to say, well, you know what, teachers, you're a new teacher, right? You're at scale here, right? I'm sure if somebody walks in that's a teacher from another district that has 15 years' experience, they're not starting out at step 1. They must be starting out somewhere else, and there's criteria. That has to be some criteria based for that.
In the perfect world, yeah. When you're tied by budgets.
Well, no,
there's
the
certain-
bottom line is we have to be able to afford it too.
There's some ways, I've been able to, even though, I've had somebody take a $5 an hour cut in pay.
Right.
But they had 10 years of experience, so they kept that level of experience, and, was able to give them more vacation time, same amount of vacation time that they came from, or.
that was my other question, on the benefits.
Nothing to do with benefits.
There's nothing to do with that.
You can get into some of the surveys, they do ask, for benefit levels. So you can, if you're adjusting your benefits package, but wasn't even, I didn't have access to that information.
I think what we're looking for is to standardize it and keep any type of possible discrimination out of the question. I think, again, I go back to assigning those levels, which gives you, if it's in writing and voted on, this is what we do. If, I don't know, that's just my 2 cents. I think by putting everybody at the average, I think you're shortchanging some and overbooking some others. Unless we have a very, very tenured workforce, which we probably do, you know? So in some cases, you're shortchanging people by using the average. I think you should go to those steps. And, because, you know, somebody that's been here 25 years, and I'm sure we must have people here 25 years, if they're just at the average, they probably should be close to the top.
But then you're gonna define the steps.
Well, they are, that has occurred in here,
Yeah.
but, you know, it's more of a function of, you know, what other towns paid that position than, because I didn't look at length of service. Length of service comes later. You gotta get their pay adjusted to, you know, what the market pays.
Yeah, average of the market, or you want to be, you know, 10% below or 10%
Yeah,
above.
that's why I said.
And then
you know,
establish it, that's
you
fine.
can
As
Pay
long as you-
75% or
Right.
95%.
But not everybody gets it. It should be criteria based. So if I can tell you if let's use your job. If we hired somebody, when you say, look, I'm done, I'm retiring, if we hired somebody that had 3 to 5 years experience as a town administrator, I would not be looking to give them the max. I'd be looking to bring that person in at a different level and bring that person up accordingly. So, again, that's just the theory. I'm not saying take the personalities and the people out of it.
Yeah.
Gary, go.
Yeah, I thought that what Mike was trying to do somewhat, but, you know, I've heard a lot that we need to do this, that many of our positions aren't paid enough, but yet, how's our turnover?
It depends.
I can speak to that one.
I-
Six planners in 12 years.
Pardon me?
Six planners in 12 years since I've been here.
The planners, but that position has generated over the years since I've been here from a 20-hour, in the 8 years I've been from 20 hours a week to 40 hours. So that's been an evolving position.
4 building
But-
inspectors in 12 years.
And yes, and the one that came from Haverhill, the largest city. He's underpaid, but yet he came here. You know, the last building inspector we left said he didn't leave because he didn't like working here. He just had a better offer at a town next door. So he didn't run out the door. I mean, exit interviews are also important. And you know, so we didn't lose him because of that. We didn't lose Quince. We lost Quince. You know, if you knew Quince, you knew more of the reasons why we lost Quince. So that turnover is there's a lot of personalities in that turnover. I
Well,
don't
Gary,
think we've got-
to answer your
but-
question, you know, we've lost a number of, well, the lower paid jobs. The finance clerks, you know, we've been going through them every 6 months.
Oh, I know you didn't want to answer this, and you said you can't look at it in a survey, but I think we do need to try to find out on total compensation. I mean, what other towns paid. You know, we've gone through this when we've been trying to negotiate insurance. I think you've said that we are one of the betters at how we co-pay the insurance than some towns. And I suppose
No,
we could
we're
be.
one of the worst.
I thought I heard it quite differently.
Well, we're the better for the town.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
If you look at it for the employee, we're terrible. They're still at 10 and 25%.
Okay. So you're saying other towns are paying much better on that? But now my other
and that's
question
what
is,
happened with the electric department.
my other question was, at what point do all of these towns consider employees full-time? I mean, I don't think the state even has a standard on
20
that.
hours.
Is that pretty, that municipal, pretty much all
We're
municipal?
required by law to pay full-time, we're required to pay health insurance.
At 20 hours?
Yeah, and then what we do is
But that,
pay.
they don't require that of private industry.
Oh,
Yeah. So I mean, we gotta look at it as a benefit.
Can I chime in on this from experience
I
for
mean,
one
But
second?
this is above and beyond the
This is
scope of this
wages
study.
only. It has nothing to do with benefits.
That's
Just
a
wages.
whole
Period.
different study.
Yep.
But there's so
Totally
many of
different.
these, and I keep hearing how we're underpaying people, but I really don't see people running out the door. I'm not trying to,
No,
trying to say we don't need, I think we definitely need to be looking at this. And again, I think moving forward, if we're gonna move forward with any of this, we do it in conjunction with finance and advisory, I really do.
Well, don't forget
Because
the
we don't
software.
have, I
With all
mean,
due respect, they should have nothing to do with this. This is a selectman's authority, not theirs.
well, when people are looking to change the
Matter of
thing.
fact, it's supposed to be town meeting approved.
Well, yeah, that's, boy, I'd like to see that, but then again, that could be scary because I saw it over in Groveland. You know, you can fill up a town hall with certain employees and get what you want. So it's,
I think it's a professional
I
way
shouldn't
of
say
looking at it.
employees, but
You know, this is finally we've got a professional way of looking at it. The questions after, once we get it the way we want it, is what do we do about it? That's when, and I agree with you,
that's.
100%.
Yeah.
When we get to the what do we do about
We can't
it?
say give everybody a raise.
No,
and
I don't think that's
finances-
what Mike's saying. He's saying he's done the analysis, hasn't made any suggestions of what we should do. I still think the analysis needs to be tweaked a little bit differently, but you know,
Well, this is a work in progress, right?
I mean, that,
I mean, this is not.
that's the way I was looking at what Joe just said. I look
Yeah,
at
well,
this, this is.
we need to adopt and come into line with the new law July 1.
Of 2018.
Yes. And we need to be working towards, what the new law gives you is a 3-year shelter. You know, it says, okay, we realize towns are, you know, they can't just raise money, you know, at the stroke. The other thing is, see, they can't tell you to
Nice.
do it because it's a, it would be a
unfunded liability.
unfunded liability.
Nice that we realize it.
But they're saying, okay, we're not making you do it, but the law's here, and if you're found discriminating against people in wages by the courts, that's not an unfunded mandate. The courts are gonna,
Well, I think what's important in this too, Mr. Chairman, if I could,
Yep.
is to look at the groupings to see if there's any inequities within the groupings. So for instance, you had like, I don't know what page it was, but you had all those groupings, Mike, and what you gotta look at is, that's where the discrimination piece comes in. We can pay lower than market if we want to. Let's see who we're gonna attract, to Gary's point. But what you really have to take a look at is, you had the groups here too, Mike. I just wanted to go right here. So within groups, job class C, council on aging, health agent, it says director, assistant assessor, treasurer collector, town accountant, conservation agent, and town planner. Perfect. See what, I got you right in there. We have to look at those and say, all right, those as a group, are we really out of line? Who is out of line? Because the job responsibilities are the same. They may do different things, but the level of risk and the level of responsibility is the same. Are they all within 10% of each other? If there's outliers, then we have to address, that's the real point in all this, is we have to address those. We
Yes.
can still be below market. We're not discriminating if we say we pay our town administrator X and the guys down the street pay 50% more. That's not discrimination. If he wants, to your point, if he wants to take the job, he takes the
It
job.
could be a much
But
better
we gotta
town
look
to
at,
work for.
right. But if we had 3 town administrators and one was making 100,000, one was making 60,000, the other one was making 40, that's a problem.
So you can reclassify the job.
Right, so well, no, if they're all doing the same thing, you gotta look to see if any of these people are making a lot more than each other or a lot less than each other. You gotta look at these groups. That's the
Yeah.
most, that's where the discrimination lies.
yes, yeah,
Exactly.
yes.
So, assistant treasurer, executive assistant, CATV director, and assistant PD, admin assistant to PD, should all be within a range hourly of about 5 to 10% of each other. Now, there could be people higher because they're in the job 30 years. There could be
Yes.
people at the lower level. That's where those steps come in. And it's important to be,
Such as what the chief did earlier.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, so
Exactly.
that's in line with the
Right.
amount of time that
One
you've
of
been there.
Peter's guys could be compared to, you know, the harbor master. I don't know, I'm just picking a crazy thing. But if that guy over at Peter's place is making $40 an hour and the harbor master's making 12, there's a problem. And that's something we would have to address. That's where the groups come in. And that's why you have to have the steps too.
But then we also have the different pay authorities in town that, there's not a
That's
lot,
why I didn't even go there.
there's not a lot we can do
Yeah,
there.
you can't do that. Yeah, that's,
It only makes things worse.
and those are unionized jobs versus these, are these unionized jobs in here too?
No.
No, these are just, so this is non-unionized, non-bargaining agreement, jobs. But, I mean, I would be willing to, if you, Mr. Chairman, if you would indulge me, to spend a little bit more time with Mike on this, you know, him and I, kind of be the liaison to the board on this if you want.
Great liaison to it since you actually.
Yeah,
met with
we've
us
been
all the
doing
time,
this for a
so.
while now, and it's great. It
Yeah.
really does.
My question for you on the, so the state's requiring us to do something by July of next year, but our budget season is before that. Okay, so do we technically have to get this done before our budget season? Because if we're gonna make some adjustments, you know, to salaries,
Yeah,
Okay,
we need to start
then we
with this
need-
budget.
so we technically we need to get this done before.
We don't have to achieve nirvana by July 1, but we gotta start working towards it this year.
But my point is, don't we have to get this done before we vote on our next budget?
Yes,
Okay, so it'll be way
Yeah.
before July then.
but what I'm saying, I'm not saying that every, you know, on Appendix G, that you have to make that number in 1 year. You know, you could look at one position and say, well, we're X, you know, dollars behind. Well, do 1/3 of X for the next 3 years to get to where you need to go.
However, if all three people in that group are pretty much in the same line, that's only a market adjustment. That's not a almost discrimination adjustment.
Right.
So you gotta be careful with that.
Yeah,
So,
this is
Right.
just market right now.
Right.
We, you know, and I'm gonna be working with legal counsel, with his guidance to make sure we're not, that we pass, you know, we're not discriminating by
Right.
gender.
right. So if you had, just as a for instance, and I know I'm beating this to death, but if you had the two chiefs and the town administrator, that's a group. That's the highest group that we have.
Yep.
What we should do is take a look at all three salaries, right, and compare them to market for a market adjustment if we want to make a market adjustment, or a discriminatory piece of it, where, again, it doesn't matter whether you're male or female, it's about the job, right? So if Mike's in his job, and the chief's in his job, and the other chief's in his job, if there's a big disparity between one of them, right, then that has to be adjusted. Then we say, all right, well, we've got them in the job, and they're below market. They've accepted the job below market. That's a decision we want to make, you know, if we're worried about losing them. But that's not a discriminatory piece. The only discriminatory lookup is to make sure that the three people that have the same, pretty much the same responsibility, are all making the same amount of money, are very close to each other with longevity adjustment.
Question.
And I thought that's what I was doing.
Yeah, no, I'm not, Mike, I'm not crapping on you, don't get
No,
me-
no, legal,
I think you did great.
legal counsel said that doesn't cut the mustard anymore.
Yeah, this is a.
You
this-
gotta look at male, female.
Right, well, I'm saying, right, exactly.
So
We can
listen-
take it that next step.
Yep, hold on. So listen, we're gonna take one more question from Gary, and then, you know,
I'll work
David,
with Mike on this.
work with Mike on it. You know, come back to us when you guys have some more
We'll say
feedback.
this, great job,
Okay,
it's a
and-
lot of work.
Absolutely.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. So we're gonna take one last comment from Gary, okay, and then we're gonna move on. Okay.
I'm trying to fully understand the objective here, because Mike started with the fact that we haven't had this done since 2003, I think may have been the date that you gave us.
Yeah, 2003.
And even though it may be okay to pay less, but now we're also throwing in a new state law that we've gotta worry about. So is that our first objective, is to make sure that we're not breaking the law? I mean, what brought this about? I guess other than,
Well, we,
you know, we're talking about, well, we may be underpaying, but we may not be able to change because of budgetary reasons, but if we are breaking a law, we
well, that
It's an unfunded
that was
mandate.
the additional leverage I used to get you guys to look at
okay.
paying what the market pays.
So basically, your objective is to really get us to look at the full picture.
Yes.
Okay, I guess that's where I'm going, because I'm hearing the state law and unfunded mandates even, so.
Well, and my concern was the state, okay? I mean, we certainly don't want to be in a position where the state comes to us and, you know, they're calling us, you know, uncompliant with,
They probably
with
haven't got
this.
the
And-
manpower to do
I
it
don't
anyways.
think we're.
Well, do you want, I wouldn't want to rely on probably, you know, if they, in this day and age, if they feel like they want to put a lot of man hours to it, they'll do it, you know, and I don't want to take that risk. So, all right, listen, this board, I want to commend each and every one of you. It was a very long agenda tonight. And, you know, I thank everyone, for their time. Good night, Chief, thank you very much. You've been here just as long as we have. So we've gone over a lot, so, as far as the agenda itself, you know, please let me know if there are any further, questions. Mike and I, you know, are gonna talk about, you know, a couple of these things. Just for the record, again, we did pass over, again, the, host agreement vote, the letter of non-opposition vote, and just for the public, we did have the National Ave property discussion on the agenda. We passed over that tonight as well, okay? So with that being said, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great night.